Good morning. Thank you for joining us today, whether you're here in person in Washington or on our Zoom anywhere in the country. My name is Julia Kite-Laidlaw, and I'm the Senior Program Manager for Road to Zero at the National Safety Council. And today, I'm really happy to welcome you to what is essentially a celebration of 10 years of the Road to Zero and collaboration. It is a tremendous, and every one of you who is here or joining us from anywhere in the country has been part of it. And we'll be celebrating 10 years of collaboration, of best practices, and of turning research into real results that save lives. So we have a very busy agenda here today. We have panels, we have presentations from our current Road to Zero grantees. So without further ado, I want to welcome the CEO of the National Safety Council and the chair of Road to Zero, Lorraine Martin.
Well, thank you, Julia, and good morning to everyone, and welcome to the 2026 Road to Zero annual meeting. To everyone in person, and thank you for joining us here on this steamy Washington day, and also for those who are across the way. We have about 300 folks that are joining us remotely, and we really appreciate this national initiative. Today's annual meeting builds on the important work that we've done together, and will highlight the latest innovations and strategies for driving future progress. We do have the opportunity to hear from some leading experts today and our 2025 grantees and learn about the real impact that their projects are making in their communities and around the country. Later this morning, we'll have the pleasure of hearing from our keynote speaker sitting right over here to my right, and a vital partner who will share the update on the federal priorities and how we can support them across the nation. And while today is focused on learning and progress, we're also here to celebrate, as Julia just said. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimates that roadway deaths fell by 6.7% in 2005. This brings us to the second lowest traffic fatality record in history. We know every single one is preventable, and until we get to not stop, but progress is real, and we have to make sure it continues. And there's more. This year marks the decade, as Julia said, of the Road to Zero Coalition. 10 years since the National Safety Council, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, the Federal Highway Administration, and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration all came together with all of you and shared a commitment to end the daily tragedy of preventable deaths on our roads. So let me tell you, these milestones of 6.7 and 10 years, they are not coincidental. The decline in fatalities on our roads is a result of the road safety strategies championed by this coalition and the solutions that it helped advance. In 2017, we awarded the first community traffic safety grants funded by the generous support of our longtime partner and coalition co-founder, NHTSA. Since then, we provided funding for nearly 50 programs and projects, and today we're now seeing that these innovations and solutions developed from those early grants become standard practice across our communities. The Road to Zero Coalition funded early Vision Zero plans in Chicago and Los Angeles, and today there are more than 60 Vision Zero communities nationwide. We helped launch ITE, and I know they're here with us here today, Speed Management for Safety Information Hub, which helps transportation professionals safely manage speed using measures that are now widely adopted across the nation. We've supported projects that protect vulnerable road users, including installing pedestrian islands and flashing beacons and protected routes to schools that are now widely recognized as essential methods to protect all users as they share the road. We've also strengthened our collaboration between the workplace and roadway sectors. We have folks here from the waste management team. I know I saw you earlier, sir. This is a vital step to the nation where transportation incidents, and I don't know if I've shared this here on this stage, are 38% of all occupational fatalities. Our roads are workplaces, and folks are in those dangerous environments as they get their work done. By welcoming new partners into the coalition, including the Occupational Health and Safety Administration, known as OSHA, and convening innovative safety leaders and agencies, we look to make some progress here as well. We've done something powerful, the folks in this room. We've turned ideas into reality. We've turned concepts into saving lives. And from the start, zero roadway deaths by 2050 was always an ambitious goal, but we know how to get there. Doubling down on what works. You're going to hear a lot about that from our keynote. Advancing life-saving technologies and promoting a safe system approach. We know what works. For the past 10 years, we've sought to take these pillars from principle to practice, and now we're seeing results, the lives saved on our streets. In best practices adopted in communities, in federal policy, on Sunday, the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee released the text of a bipartisan 5-year surface transportation reauthorization bill. That's a mouthful. As written, the bill deepens interagency collaboration, things like between Department of Transportation and Department of Labor, codifies the Safe Streets for Roads All grant program, that's fantastic, and offers support for telematics. 3 very, very pivotal, really groundbreaking legislation that could be life-saving. We have a lot to celebrate, as Julia said, and that is part of why we are here today, reflecting on all that you have done and the progress that's been made, but also looking ahead. Because our work is far from complete. Even that 6.7% is fantastic. There's still too many lives lost on our roads, and we lose tens of thousands of lives each year. As new technologies reshape how we move from place to place, and they're coming fast, the work we do together, the seeds of innovation and ideas to educate and inform and advance solutions remains imperative. Staying united through this coalition in this mission is critical to making our roads safe. And we have nearly 2,000 members of this coalition today, and we welcome all. It's now challenging sometimes to see the impact of our work, but I assure you it matters. It has saved lives. 2 people who exemplify our work on how Road to Zero grants have directly saved lives are going to be here with us today. Last year, the Colorado World Blood Coalition launched a pilot program to train paramedics to administer whole blood transfusion to crash victims before they reach the hospital. Within just a few minutes, the project has administered 25 units of blood with an incredible 80% survival rate for its patients. Unfortunately, Dr. Scott Branney, the chair of the Colorado Whole Blood Coalition, was delayed in Chicago. He got that far and can't attend us here today, but we're honored to have Peter Touche, an EMT who was trained through this program, here to speak about the game-changing, life-saving service and to show us an example of where a Road to Zero grant really made the difference literally between life and death for a crash victim. Julia Laidlaw will now give a brief introduction in place of the doctor who wasn't able to join us. Julia, could you join me back?
So we had many applications involving pre-hospital whole blood administration for a 2025 Road to Zero traffic safety grant cohort. But the Colorado Whole Blood Coalition stood out for its collaborative approach and its real strength of evaluation. And this was just a project that we had very high hopes for, and those hopes have been fulfilled. I remember when Dr. Branney contacted me with his regular progress report and said that on Christmas Eve of last year, they'd administered their first pre-hospital transfusion to an older man who had been in a crash, and he lived. That was when you get one of those moments working in road safety where what's very abstract and research oriented on the page becomes action, and it becomes a real life saved. And there's really nothing quite like that. The Colorado Whole Blood Coalition is a consortium of regional emergency medicine and trauma agencies in the state of Colorado, along with other medical services and blood providers. And they're developing consistent protocols and processes that can be adopted by many local groups throughout the state so that the benefits of pre-hospital whole blood can be as widespread as possible. So it's my pleasure to welcome Peter Touche, an EMT from Clear Creek EMS, one of the agencies involved in the pre-hospital whole blood program funded by Road to Zero. This project is centered around the I-70 highway corridor in an area west of Denver. And I'll leave it to Peter now to show how the Road to Zero is saving lives. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Peter Touche. I am a paramedic with Clear Creek EMS out of Colorado. I'm going to speak a little bit today about a patient that we administered blood to, thanks to the grant that you all gave us. First, I'd like to speak a little bit about the agency that I represent. So Clear Creek EMS is a county-based EMS agency. We have 25 full-time employees. Our county is about 45 minutes west of Denver. We're a rural and mountainous county with one major interstate, I-70, which runs east through west through our county. We have multiple single-lane highways, some dirt roads, Jeep trails, ATV trails. We have a lot of outdoor recreation in our county. We have 2 ski resorts. We have backcountry skiing, rock climbing, fishing, whitewater rafting, hunting, you name it, all within our county. We do not have a hospital in our county, so all of our patients are transported to neighboring counties. This patient was found on the eastern border of our county. This is really our shortest possible transport at about 25 minutes. Our average transport time is about 35 minutes, although many times our transports can be up to and even over an hour. Our response times can be up to 30 minutes. They can be even longer than that, especially for our patients that are found deep in the backcountry and are involving our search and rescue operations. We get some very inclement weather in our county. We have a lot of snow and a lot of wind. This can prevent helicopter transportations for our patients who would otherwise very much benefit from that. So we can be stuck transporting very critical patients with very long transport times. So this is just a map of our response area. You can see from the topography of this map, we have a lot of places in our county that are very difficult to access. So we have 6,500 residents in our service area, but on average, about 50,000 cars come through our county per day. We have well over 100,000 people in peak season over our holidays and such traveling through our county, and on average, about 28 million people a year visit our county. About 30% of our responses are onto U.S. highways. And moving forward, we are looking to start transporting blood into our backcountry search and rescue deployments. We're working to overcome some logistical hurdles before we can do that, but that's the next step, and very, very exciting stuff. We're super excited about this. So on to this case presentation. So this was a head-on motor vehicle collision that happened on US Highway 40. This is a single lane winding mountain highway. It crosses through 12 states, New Jersey through Utah, and where this accident occurred, it's a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit. Both of these vehicles were single occupant. The occupant of the other vehicle was found to be deceased upon our arrival. Our patient's vehicle was found to have greater than 12 inches of intrusion into the driver compartment and severe damage to the front and side of the vehicle. And airbag deployment was noted as well. To have a few pictures of the accident for you all here. You can see some very significant damage to the vehicle. One more for you all here. So when we show up to a call like this and we have one party that's deceased and we have this level of damage to the vehicle, we know right off the bat that this is a very high mechanism of injury, and our index of suspicion for severe traumatic injuries is very elevated, just from the windshield of our ambulance. Some initial details: our patient was found sitting in the driver's seat. His eyes were closed. He was moaning. He was making non-purposeful movements. He couldn't speak to us. He could not follow commands. Very agitated, writhing around. We initially could not feel a radial pulse, and we could not obtain a blood pressure, and his heart rate was found to be elevated. So what this tells us is that this patient is bleeding internally. That's why we cannot get a blood pressure or feel this radial pulse, and his heart rate is elevated to compensate for this blood loss. This is a patient in a very severe state of shock. A quick overview of how we treated this patient: we worked on immobilizing his spine. We administered some oxygen. With the help of our fire department, we extricated him from the vehicle. In and of itself, this was a very difficult process due to the extensive damage to the vehicle. A part of the console of the vehicle, a piece of metal, had come out and embedded itself into his leg just below his knee. So it was difficult just removing him from the vehicle. Once you're able to do that, we put him on the stretcher, loaded him into our ambulance. We removed his clothing, did a trauma assessment, obtained some vital signs. We placed a sternal IO. So what this is a rigid hollow metal catheter that's placed in the breastbone, and this allows us to administer medication, fluids, blood, etc., through the bone and into the body that way. Once that was established, we gave a medication to help combat that agitation. We administered whole blood, which was the most significant treatment that this patient received. We gave a medication to help promote the patient's intrinsic clotting factors. And en route to the hospital, this patient stopped breathing. We placed an airway adjunct to keep his airway open and patent, and we ventilated the patient ourselves. At the hospital, this patient was found to be in hemorrhagic shock due to intra-abdominal mesenteric bleeding. This is a fancy way of saying that this patient was bleeding internally into his abdomen. He was in the hospital for 25 days before being discharged, and he is now out of the hospital. He's neurologically intact and has quality of life. This patient would have bled to death and would have died had we not had the oxygen in the pre-hospital setting. So why is blood so important for patients like this? So with trauma patients, we're very concerned with what we call the triad of death, which is hypothermia, acidosis, and coagulopathy. Years ago, the treatment of choice used to be large amounts of isotonic crystalloid, normal saline, the clear IV fluids you may have seen in the hospital. Large amounts of this can absolutely improve your blood pressure. However, these fluids do not have red blood cells, they do not have platelets, so they lack the oxygen carrying capacity and the clotting capabilities of blood. This also dilutes the blood in your body. This contributes to anemia. And these fluids are engineered to be very close to your body's intrinsic pH. However, these fluids are not quite the same, and large amounts of it can actually lead to acidosis, which, as I said earlier, is very, very bad for our trauma patients. Blood, on the other hand, when we administer it, it's heated, so it helps maintain your body's core temperature. It is human blood, so it matches your pH exactly, and it does not contribute to any acidosis. And it has the red blood cells to help deliver oxygen through the tissues throughout your body, and it has the platelets to help and promote clotting in your body as well. I do have some statistics for you all here. So pre-hospital blood administration has been shown to have a 60% decrease in 24-hour mortality and less intense states of shock upon arriving to the hospital. It gives a 4-fold increased survival rate, and a 1-minute delay in blood administration increased 30-day mortality by 2%. So that's 1 minute delay. We had a 25-minute transport, as well as the time it took to extricate this patient from the vehicle. This patient dies 10 out of 10 times if he does not receive blood in the pre-hospital setting. So the grant that we received absolutely saved this patient's life. We have given blood to over a dozen patients since we've received this grant. We are super happy to have this ability to treat the patients who need this intervention. And we're very grateful for this grant, and we're looking forward to being able to provide this intervention to those in our community in the future who need it. So thank you all so much for this grant, and thank you all for having me here today and to let me speak.
This is what we do, what we do. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I hope that 25 becomes sky's the limit. We're here to help. So thank you so much for sharing that. Both Scott and Peter, although the doctor couldn't be with us here today, thank you so much for sharing that powerful story, the lessons learned. We're hoping now we'll be able to take this and share it with the rest of the world, the rest of the country, so that we can have this be yet another pilot of something much bigger to come. So thank you. You are true safety heroes. We are so grateful all the colleagues could hear the story here today and what all of you have been doing around the country. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Administrator Jonathan Morrison. He leads NHTSA, as we all know, and have worked with, the agency tasked with establishing and enforcing vehicle safety standards and educating Americans to use our nation's transportation system safely. Through his leadership, NHTSA is advancing key priorities, including the execution of a federal regulatory framework for autonomous vehicles, setting and enforcing vehicle fuel economy standards, and leading the nation's 911 emergency medical services. I'm sure this was near and dear to your heart, sir. And the development of what we're going to hear about, and some of us have already gotten a chance to get a peek at the Pathways to Safer Streets, a national traffic safety action plan. Previously, Administrator Morrison served as NHTSA's chief counsel and led legal, regulatory, and government affairs and policy efforts for the Apple Special Project Group. And we thank him for his partnership and look forward to working with him and his team on roadway safety in the years to come. Please give a warm welcome to NHTSA's Administrator, Jonathan Morrison.
Thank you, Lorraine. It is a true pleasure to be with you here today. One of the greatest honors in my role as NHTSA's administrator is collaborating with the National Safety Council and our devoted community of safety advocates. We deeply value our longstanding and vital partnership with NSC. To everyone here and joining online, thank you for your relentless commitment to road safety. To those who have been transformed by personal tragedy of losing a loved one into a catalyst for change, we hear you, we salute you, we thank you, and our hearts go out to you. Your stories are the most powerful tools we have to ensure that other families and loved ones are spared the grief of a roadway crash. And I can just tell you personally, the stories I hear from you, the survivors of crashes or those who have lost loved ones, you may wonder, like, is this making a difference? I can tell you it does make a difference. Your stories inspire me and others in this profession. Since its launch in 2016, the Road to Zero Coalition, partnership between US DOT, NHTSA, the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and the National Safety Council, is the largest national traffic safety alliance, has been essential to our life-saving mission. As we mark the 10-year milestone of this coalition, NHTSA remains unshakable in our shared goal: zero traffic deaths. We have a lot of hard work ahead, and we are ready to tackle them alongside of you. We remained anchored by three pillars established a decade ago: doubling down on proven strategies, accelerating innovation of life-saving technology, and prioritizing safety in every decision. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy fully supports our mission and has reaffirmed this administration's unwavering commitment to significantly reducing roadway crashes, fatalities, and serious injuries. While NHTSA receives significant attention for our work on vehicle technology, such as fuel economy, automation, new federal standards, it takes 30 years to turn over the fleet. And I want to make a difference in our ongoing traffic safety crisis by acting today. Yes, we had fantastic results with a year-over-year reduction of 6.7% in fatalities from 2024, but we cannot relent, and we will not relent at NHTSA. We know that the vast majority of fatal crashes stem from a handful of risky behaviors: impairment, speeding, distraction, and a lack of seatbelt use. So I was very proud to announce 1 month ago today, NHTSA's Behavioral Safety Action Plan, which we refer to as Pathways to Safer Streets, or P2SS. This initiative focuses on innovation, collaboration, and a renewed emphasis on traffic law enforcement. And it draws upon a strong foundation of shared goals: that deaths and injuries are unacceptable, that humans make mistakes and are vulnerable, that responsibility is shared, safety is proactive, and redundancy is critical. The Pathways Initiative is a system of 8 intersecting pathways where each component depends upon the others to save lives. The first pathway is re-engaging law enforcement. Under Secretary Duffy and the current administration, we fundamentally reject the idea of withdrawing support for those who put their lives on the line to enforce our traffic laws. So let me be plain: NHTSA cannot accomplish its mission without law enforcement. We are restoring and expanding grant programs, doubling down on the data-driven approaches to crime and traffic safety initiative to integrate crime and traffic data, and launching public service awards to honor local heroes. Through partnerships with the DOJ and organizations like Below 100, we are providing the training and supporting the move-over protections our officers deserve. and our colleagues in the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration are working closely with law enforcement to crack down on illegal commercial motor vehicle operators who bypass safety regulations and put everyone on the road at risk. The second pathway is combating impaired driving. 1/3 of all roadway fatalities involve alcohol, drugs, or both. We are helping states ensure that offenders no longer fall through the cracks. Our new tracking system guide provides states with recommendations on steps they can take to link every arrest to court outcomes and treatment to stop the cycle of recidivism. We are stepping up our support for ignition interlocks and promoting compliance-based removal, ensuring driving privileges are only restored once sobriety behind the wheel is proven. We're also providing focus on the mental health issues that lurk behind repeat offenders. To address drug impairment, we have expanded toxicology liaisons to all 50 states and are supporting the use of oral fluid devices for on-the-spot testing. Our third pathway is occupant protection. Today's vehicles are safer than ever, but the systems in vehicles depend upon people being in the right place, which starts and ends with the seatbelt. Buckling up is the simplest, most effective way to survive a crash. Yet in parts of the South and in rural communities, belt use can be as low as 60%. Our Rural High Five program provides a roadmap to target these areas. We're also focusing on child passenger safety, partnering with the Army and Air Force to train first responders and educate new parents on how to correctly install seatbelts or car seats, 50% of which are installed incorrectly. We're also hammering home the need to use booster seats, the most commonly skipped step as children graduate to adult restraint systems. Additionally, we're ramping up messaging to prevent hot car tragedies, which claim an average of 37 very young lives each and every year. The fourth pathway is stopping excessive speed. Speeding contributes to nearly 1/3 of all fatalities on our roadways. We are laser focused on the most dangerous offenders. These are those that are driving 30, 40, or 50 miles over the speed limit. We should never have anybody driving over 100 miles per hour on our roadways. This is criminal behavior, and we support significant fines and jail time for such disregard for human life. We also support enforcement aids and are exploring speed interlock technologies for chronic excessive speeders. We think that can play a huge role in dropping this dangerous behavior. The fifth pathway is ending distracted driving. Last year, over 3,200 people were killed in crashes involving distraction, but we believe the true number is much, much higher. Secretary Duffy is leading by example, becoming the first transportation secretary to be the face of a NHTSA safety ad. We are moving beyond a records-based approach to utilize telematics data and are compiling a promising practices guide to help states implement the most successful distraction countermeasures. The sixth pathway, much in line with Peter's presentation we just had, is post-crash care. Trauma is the leading cause of preventable death for those under 45, and we are truly excited about advancements in this space. Currently, 43% of people who die in traffic crashes are still alive when first responders arrive at the scene. And research shows that pre-hospital blood transfusion can save 37% trauma victims. You had some fantastic data in your presentation. I'm going to start incorporating into my speeches. If Jane, who's sitting next to him, lets me. But by starting transfusions at the crash location, we are saving lives in the field. Just last year, we invested $80 million to expand these programs through our Safer Streets and Roads for All grant and a demonstration project we launched with the Department of War to add pre-hospital blood transfusion programs to dozens and dozens of local EMS agencies. By funding the equipment and training needed for blood transfusions in the field, we are giving first responders the ability to save crash victims before they reach the hospital doors. Road to Zero is also supporting these programs, and I encourage you to continue to do so. This is really, really exciting technology. I'd also like to invite everybody to Thursday's Save a Life Day event at the Department of Transportation. We have a full day's worth of activities, really exciting discussion, and we'll be spending a lot of time talking about pre-hospital blood transfusion. The seventh pathway is our National Partnership Network. Safety is a shared responsibility that requires us to think outside traditional silos. We're collaborating with the Department of War, the National Park Service, and the Indian Health Service. We're also expanding our collaboration with a number of safety organizations, such as the National Safety Council. However, the most profound impacts often happen at the county and local levels. We are calling on you to help drive change in your own communities. The success of our mission depends on local leaders and organizations who understand the unique dynamics on their own streets. We ask you to consider how your organization can make a specific impact, whether it's through implementing a company-wide distracted driving policy, hosting a local car seat check event, or advocating for safer infrastructure. Your local footprint is where these pathways become a reality. We want to be open and accessible to those who are ready to do the work. If you'd like to collaborate with NHTSA on this and join our National Partnership Network, please reach out to our Acting Associate Administrator for Research and Program Delivery, Jane Terry. She's right here in the audience, and I hope you don't throw some at me for giving out your email address. That is jane.terry@dot.gov. Her personal cell phone, I'm just joking. She and her team would be happy to hear from you again. We want to help leverage all of our voices to expand the message. We think that will make a difference. And our eighth and final pathway is enhancing our work with state highway safety offices. 2/3 of our grant of our budget goes to the states in the form of highway safety grants, and we are looking to empower states with new approaches. We're now launching deep data dives and have announced a new promising practices repository to help identify and implement successful projects. We encourage you to reach out to your state highway safety partners to identify opportunities for collaboration and identify innovative approaches. We have a fantastic compilation that we call Countermeasures at Work. These are known ways to combat traffic safety risks, but we can't stop and end there. We really need to launch new innovative approaches, such as pre-hospital blood. So if there are ways that we can learn about innovative approaches, we want to support those to the extent we can within the restraints that we have with grant regulations and the laws. And again, this includes supporting innovative Road to Zero grant recipients who are tackling issues like the safety of pedestrians, from improved lighting projects to community-based education in high-risk corridors. We're investing in a world where walking doesn't come with a life-threatening risk. We're also leveraging technology through telematics-based safety mapping to identify locations with hard braking and where swerving occurs, to identify hot spots for crash risk before the next tragedy occurs. We focus so much in our work with the census data that we have of traffic fatalities, but that is inherently a lagging indicator. So the extent to which we can learn about leading indicators before crashes occur, we want to lean in there. In conclusion, these 8 pathways represent a comprehensive, aggressive, and data-driven approach to safety. We are providing the tools, the funding, and the leadership. We invite you to join us in the expedition. As we look towards a goal of zero traffic deaths, the road ahead is undoubtedly long, but it is not one that we travel alone, nor can we, nor should we. The progress we have made over the last decade is a testament to what is possible when federal leadership, state governments, local law enforcement, and dedicated advocates move in the same direction. Our mission is about more than just data points and policy updates. It is about the families who will remain whole because of the work that we do here today. Thank you for your partnership, your passion, and your persistence. Together, we will work to end the crisis where every year tens of thousands of people fail to make it home safely, and we will not rest until that number hits 0. Thank you very much.
Can't let you escape yet, sir. On behalf of the roughly 2,000 members of the Road to Zero Coalition, thank you for those words. Thank you for your leadership. I loved the safety in every decision. That really brings it right home for all of us. You're helping save lives. We're here to help you. Thank you for your leadership. And a coin on behalf of the Road to Zero Coalition. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator. It's wonderful to have NHTSA as a partner along, and I can't think of a better agency to really help us turn all this research, all these findings into real practice. So next, I'd like to show you a short video from another one of our current Road to Zero Community Traffic Safety Grant recipients. This is the National EMS Quality Alliance, or NEMSQA. Sorry, a lot of acronyms in this business. They received a grant for their virtual reality-based training for EMS response to crashes. The use of virtual reality makes this interactive, makes it relevant, and makes it a lot easier to scale. They currently are trialing this in Pennsylvania and Maine, and in this short video, they speak a bit more about how this grant has enabled them in their mission. So.
This work
Sorry about that. Great.
This work is in support of the National Safety Council and the Road to Zero Coalition, and their shared priority of reducing traffic fatalities and serious injuries resulting from motor vehicle crashes. Our objective is to develop, pilot test, and deploy a virtual reality training module for EMS clinicians, one that integrates the critical aspects of post-crash care, interagency collaboration and communication, decision-making, safety, treatment guidelines, and quality measures. The result is an integrated, realistic training experience designed to be scalable and replicable across the EMS community. For this project, NEMSQA partnered with Health Scholars and Upskill AI. The work is organized into 3 phases. Phase 1, planning, design, and development. Phase 2, user-centered development testing and pilot deployment. Phase 3, full-scale deployment and evaluation. Across these phases, we've moved from national proposal and engineering review through storyboarding and software development, into the in-headset MVP, beta testing, and field testing, culminating in a final product ready for distribution by June 30th, 2026. The success of this program is measured through pre- and post-training knowledge assessments, and through participant satisfaction and experience surveys. Each participant takes a pre-test before the VR session. After completing the training, they're tested again, with the goal of demonstrating measurable improvement in their understanding. Both quantitative and qualitative data are collected. Surveys are offered online, with paper available for any participant who prefers it. Evaluation draws on a convenience sample of EMS providers in Maine, a state already familiar with VR-based training. Provider characteristics are reviewed and will initiate targeted recruitment as needed to ensure diverse representation. We're evaluating knowledge gain, application of guidelines, participant satisfaction, and the use of VR itself. We're currently beta testing these scenarios in several EMS agencies across Maine and Pennsylvania. We've collected a number of beta test surveys and made small targeted adjustments based on the feedback. We are 100% on target for project completion by the deadline outlined in the grant. To date, we've consumed approximately 71% of the grant funding, and we don't anticipate any overages. We'd like to thank the National Safety Council and the NHTSA for the opportunity to participate in this project. We believe that lives can be saved through training and education, and there's no better place than the virtual space. NEMSQA develops evidence-based quality measures for EMS that improve the experience and outcomes of patients. Our vision is improving patient outcomes through the collaborative development of quality measures for health systems. In 2014, that effort was formalized in the EMS Compass project funded by NHTSA. EMS Compass engaged stakeholders across the field to design and evaluate performance measures. NEMSQA completed that work through 2019, then became an independent 501c6 organization. Thank you to our president, Brooke Burton, and our immediate past president, Dr. Michael Redliner, our president-elect, Mike McAvoy, and our secretary-treasurer, Dr. Brian Wilson. Thank you also to our new executive director, Pat Songer, and to H&H EMS Solutions for their support. And thank you to our partners, Scaled Health and Scaled U, who created this video for us.
Thank you very much. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the first of our expert panels this morning. Since Road to Zero began, one of our key missions has been advancing new technologies. In recent years, with the rise of AI and the deployment of autonomous vehicles across America, this topic has only become more relevant and more exciting. We are all, though, still going to be driving our own cars for many years to come. I think full autonomy under all conditions is still something of the future. So we need to focus on making sure that those vehicles are as safe as possible. And in line with the safe system approach, we want to explore how they can compensate for human error and ensure that driver mistakes don't have deadly outcomes. So my two panelists will start by giving short presentations, and then we'll have a discussion about the state of safety technology in new passenger vehicles, as well as in commercial and fleet vehicles, and how it addresses real needs on the road. Please welcome Dr. David Kidd, Vice President for Vehicle Research at the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, and Jennifer Morrison, Director of Safety Strategy at Mazda North American Operations. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'll start off with David. You focus on identifying data-driven, pragmatic solutions for preventing harm from crashes, and your work's been instrumental in developing and advancing several IIHS vehicle rating programs, including evaluation of seatbelt reminders and automatic emergency braking that responds to different types of vehicles and bicycles. And currently, you're leading the expansion of IIHS ratings to commercial vehicles. So let me hand you the controls, and we'd love for you to show the audience what you're working on.
Great. All right. Thank you. Yeah. So it's a pleasure being here. And I look forward to sharing a little bit about what we're up to, as well as where we are going to meet our 30 by 30 strategic goals, which will appear shortly. All right. So I'm just going to talk through it. Yeah. If you have it upside down, it goes to the left. So there we go. Ready? All right. All right. So the IHS has in 2025, we set out on a strategic vision called 30 by 30. The idea being that we're heading in the wrong direction when it comes to crash deaths as a nation. We're going upwards at that time, right? You heard this morning from Administrator Morrison that we are now kind of on the descent, which is fantastic. It's multi-years that we've been descending in crash deaths. Obviously, it's on our way to zero, but this 30 by 30 mission is a more short-term goal, something that we can all rally around and meet the objective of reducing crash deaths on the way to zero. And so the idea being to reduce crash deaths 30% by the year 2030. And we can't do this alone at the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. So we're looking for partners, just like everything that Administrator Morrison was talking about. We find some folks who are interested in partnering with us to rally around those things that work. For us, we have three different areas of emphasis that we are working on, as well as trying to partner with communities so that they can put strategies that we know work into action. Those have to do with reducing risky behavior, impairment, seatbelt use, speeding, distraction. We heard about all those. Extending safety to everyone. So we typically think about this of safety of other road users like pedestrians, bicyclists, motorcyclists, but this also has to do with the diversity of people inside of vehicles. So we used crash test dummies as well as all sorts of other agencies that evaluate vehicle safety. The 50th percentile male or 5th percentile female, right? There's these kind of set the standards when it comes to how you design a vehicle. We want to make sure that vehicle protects everyone of all shapes and sizes, ages, and of course, different genders. And then there's accelerating commercial vehicle safety. This is new, not for us because we've dabbled in the commercial sector, but new in the sense that we want to evaluate commercial vehicles to promote safer designs, as well as give fleets and communities the tools they need to require and have and operate safer vehicles on the roads for business purposes. Now, one of the things we've been doing, we started, about a year ago, we started evaluating some commercial vehicles that you probably see on streets every single day, certainly outside this building here in Washington, D.C. Those are cargo vans, right? Your neighborhood FedEx, Amazon delivery folks, UPS, as well as large pickups that you see your contractors or other kind of maintenance services driving your F-350, Ram 3500. And we're evaluating them how safe they are and not crashing them, although that would be splendid. I love to see that. But we're looking at non-destructive type of testing. How well do their advanced technologies like automatic emergency braking perform? Do they have the things in the occupant compartment that will protect you if you're in a crash? Side airbags, front airbags. Does it have a seatbelt reminder that's going to motivate the driver to buckle up? We plan on releasing the first of these, we call them ratings. They're really kind of more of a scorecard to make sure that those vehicles meet a certain baseline level of safety starting in June. So next month, and that's going to be for both the cargo vans and for these pickups specific to occupant protection. Now, as I said, let's go. Here's some example of how the testing that we're doing. There we go. And so we are doing evaluations of automatic emergency braking to passenger cars in response to motorcycles to see whether or not those vehicles are detecting large tractor trailer, dry van trailers, right? As well as their responses to pedestrians during the day and during the night when the low beams are used, when high beams are used. We're also looking at visibility. How well can the driver see out of the vehicle? And then we're also evaluating headlights, okay? It is new to us, right? So we're trying to figure this out as we go. We're doing it both when the vehicle's not weighed down, but also when it has weight in it to see how it changes the performance of some of these technologies. So we're learning as we go. But you know, we are excited that soon we will be presenting the results from some of this testing. Another important thing to point out is that we are continuing to evaluate passenger vehicles, but the way that we do it will be changing. We have our Top Safety Pick Award, our Top Safety Pick Plus Award. Typically what that is, those awards acknowledge those vehicles that excel in safety. Top Safety Pick Plus means they're not only excelling in safety, but they have brand new safety innovations that put it a notch above Top Safety Pick, right? Starting in 2028, those designations would defer in the sense that Top Safety Pick Plus we resign to those vehicles that have technologies that encourage safer driving behavior. So we'll start with intelligent speed assist, expand to something that will help drivers, manage the driver's attention so they're focusing on the road, and then we'll move on to impairment. So Top Safety Pick Award will be a mechanism, a tool that we will use to motivate the industry to start incorporating technologies in the vehicle that will help deal with some of these bad behaviors on the roadway. So I've warmed up the clicker for you. There you go, Jennifer.
Thank you very much, David. And then we look forward to seeing that next month. So Jennifer Morrison is Mazda's chief safety advocate in the United States, and she leads vehicle safety policy, rating strategy, and public safety communications. She founded and leads Mazda North American Operations Vehicle Safety Strategy and Communications Department, which aligns Mazda's U.S. safety roadmap with evolving regulations and technologies. And she is also a former NHTSA investigator and a 15-year NTSB vehicle factors engineer and investigator in charge. And she's investigated more than 70 loss of life crashes. So we're really proud to have such an expert on not only responding to crashes and the aftermath of them, but also preventing them in the first place. Thank you, Jennifer.
What a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Julia. And thank you for the tee up, David, on all the Top Safety Pick Plus awards. So those are really hard to earn. The motorcycle that's been introduced in the new front crash prevention test from IHS and some of the crash testing as well. Proud to be a recipient of many of those Top Safety Pick Plus awards. And what IHS does a great job of doing is truly compelling the industry. They are often working hand in hand with us as well and letting us know about those programs in advance. I have a crash test coming up just next week. We'll be testing one of our vehicles to their new moderate front overlap test that includes a rear seat occupant where we really needed to do some more improvements in the rear seat. So it's a combination of the crash avoidance and the crash testing. I'll talk a little bit about that here today. My goal is to lay the groundwork really and pull back some of the complexities of automotive engineering, right? That the sensors and technologies on vehicles today that are part of an advanced safety suite. Yes, it's a complex system, but let me try to uncomplicate it a little bit. I like to do that just through some basic visuals here. So the systems that can prevent crashes like the ones that Dave showed with the back of the tractor trailer, with the motorcycle, with the child, is really right now for most vehicles, including Mazda vehicles, is a forward sensing camera that looks out in front of your windshield, and then front radar sensors. You can also do this through a fully vision-based system of all cameras, and there are some additional infrared and LiDAR systems that are also on the market. So these types of sensors have been on vehicles for the better part of a decade. This is not new. It has been out for a very long time. And we'll give you some statistics later about how effective these systems are. I would also like to note that these are all voluntary. To vehicles that are being made today that you can buy out on a dealer lot today don't require any of this. So it really is the industry's partnership in deploying these technologies and getting some sensors that were once a little bit complex, but have really now become efficient workhorses for us. And these sensors don't just do one thing. Each one of these components has many jobs, just like each of you. We can't just do one job these days. We have to be very efficient in our work. And that's the same thing we ask from our sensing technologies. Around the backside, about the same thing, just kind of pulling off the skeleton here so you can see that there's just those side radars. There's some technology that's just tucked into your vehicles that most people don't even know that's there. And maybe they don't need to. We talk a lot about consumer and acceptance and adoption. And I like to kind of flip that on its head, that we're putting these technologies out there and they're in vehicles now, and they've been in vehicles for about a decade, and people didn't necessarily even ask for them. We did that voluntarily because we knew that we could start preventing some of these complicated, injurious, and fatality causing crashes. So what do these sensors do? What do the radar sensors and the cameras do in a vehicle? They help us do some of the more basic things. And when I say basic, it is a complex technology, but it is over 95% of all new vehicles today. And it's very effective at preventing rear end collisions, automatic emergency braking. Most of you are familiar with the voluntary agreement that was brokered about a decade ago. Those are the systems, those are the sensors. So in case you're wondering how that all works, that's how that's functioning today. They also enable things like blind spot monitoring. Now, blind spot monitoring is not required. There's no standard. There's no MOU yet. The industry would like to start talking about that, and we're talking about that. It's a simple technology that a lot of people love, again, powered by those radar sensors. Traffic sign recognition. Jonathan Morrison spoke about speed, right? And that's another thing that our vehicles are now equipping. We're able to use that same forward sensing camera. Remember, I talked about more than one job of these sensors. That forward sensing camera, it's looking ahead for lane lines, doing things like lane keeping, also looking at vehicles and pedestrians ahead. But guess what? It can also see traffic signs, stop signs, speed limit signs. It is only as good at times as of what it can see. We can have some underlying map data that helps these systems be smarter. But the addition of these cameras, more of the software that's built in behind them, they are getting better and more prevalent on our roadways. And we're finding that they are effective when used and when enabled. You can tie these with visual and audible alerts, and they're on more and more vehicles today. Of course, the thing that people like to talk about most is that SAE Level 2 driver assistance technology. Some people like to unfortunately confuse that with autonomy. This is a hands-on, in most cases, in some cases hands-off, but driver attention system. But what's interesting about SAE Level 2 technology, that sustained forward control and sustained lateral control at the same time, is that it's allowing us to study what drivers are using in the field and bring in some additional safety assurances. So at this time, this type of technology is not classified as a safety technology. It really is a convenience system. But what we're doing is we're bringing in safety assurances on top of it, and driver monitoring cameras, right? So bringing in that same type of camera logic technology that we have on the outside of the vehicle now into the inside of the vehicle. I think we've done a lot on the outside of the vehicle with our different sensors, the radars, the cameras that I showed you earlier. I think the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to see a lot more innovation inside the cabin of the vehicle with different driver monitoring cameras in different positions. And that can do many jobs. One camera can look at things like seatbelt usage, even driver impairment, certainly distraction, It can help solve the hot cars problem. There's a huge potential here for in-cabin sensing. Maybe it's not just cameras, there's a variety of solutions, but that is the state of advanced vehicle technologies today. And like I said, this isn't new. There is this wonderful program that is sponsored by NHTSA called PARTS, the Partnership for Analytics Research and Traffic Safety. Mazda, amongst 9 other partners. We have currently 10 OEMs that are part of this. This is not just Mazda deploying all these technologies. This is an industry-wide effort. In the initial data set that we have now, which is 2015 to 23 model year, we are now ingesting up to 25 model year vehicles, but we've already found that automatic emergency braking is very effective at preventing about half of all rear impacts. And IHS has done very similar studies along that line. We're now ingesting our 2026 data set, which will cover up to 2025 model year. It includes 18 states that are sharing data. Like I mentioned, the 10 contributing OEMs, over 10 years of crash data. That's 125 million passenger vehicles that are being studied. And we can see just in the deployment, so not in the effectiveness, but the chart there that shows all of the deployments that lists 14 separate technologies. And I want to illustrate again, none of them required by federal motor vehicle safety standards. 14 different technologies that have been voluntarily deployed in the field by the automotive industry. And they're showing effectiveness at different rates. I don't have the statistics, but I did also want to mention a study that was just published between IHS, Highway Loss Data Institute, and Mazda in March, where we studied the Mazda ADAS suite, so our advanced driver assistance systems, and how effective they are at reducing injury claims. Very exciting study. It's published on both of our websites now. And spoiler alert, they're very effective, especially when they're bundled together. So if you have AEB, you have blind spot, you have traffic sign recognition, you have all of those systems bundled together, you're reducing your insurance claims, the rate of insurance claims on those vehicles by about 40%. So the systems are out there. The systems are effective, and it's not just crash avoidance. I think another important thing that Jonathan Morrison had mentioned this morning is occupant protection, right? Technology on the outside, the crash avoidance is fantastic, but don't forget the safest system in the vehicle is still the driver, and the second is still that seatbelt. But seatbelts and vehicles can also be smart. So a lot of people think that a traditional vehicle today might just have a couple of airbags. Well, a lot of them have 8, 10, even 12 airbags today. The vehicle pictured here has 10 airbags. It also is equipped with standard front and rear road seatbelt pretensioners and load limiters. Those are fantastic technologies. Seatbelts aren't just webbing and buckles anymore. They're able to pretension a person into that ideal seating position and then gradually reduce the amount of force on the occupant as well. So these are intelligent vehicles. This is all being driven internally by the automotive industry and the many great partners I have at the different OEMs that are deploying these technologies, trying to get those IHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards and seeing real world benefits from doing so. Thank you.
Jennifer. And I want everyone to just know that later on in this meeting, we'll be presenting something that we're offering now at NSC that demonstrates exactly how all these technologies Jennifer talked about works, what they do, what they don't do, in a way that is meant to be accessible to the vehicle buyer and the driver for more information. So stay tuned for that. So great. So Jennifer, I was wondering if we could start off the conversation. What does market research tell you that right now new vehicle buyers are most interested in when it comes to safety, innovation, and technology?
That's a great question. So we do a lot of market research. When I first joined the private sector about 8 years ago, I wanted the same answer to that question of how important is safety to a new customer, because that's going to help me change the minds of folks that in my own organization to make sure that we're marketing for safety and we're selling safety and we're advertising for safety. So it is a top 3 reason that anyone buys a car, and that's been proven even over the last decade. So going back 10, 15 years, we've done independently a lot of studies. We just published 1,000 survey, 1,000 person survey of new car buyers, and 94% of those people said that safety technologies were a top priority for them when they're looking for a new car. It's interesting. In some of these studies, we've also learned that Gen Z is focused more on new car ownership than they even are on home ownership, because home ownership is complicated today, that buying that new car is really a game changer for them. And they're very smart shoppers, educated shoppers. So we're wanting to make sure that they're going to check their references. They're doing their research. They're looking at the ratings of the vehicles. And we're seeing more and more that it's not about a brand or a logo. It really truly is about intuitive technologies. What car do they feel comfortable in? What car do they feel like they can control? Usability and safety sits right up there as a top priority, which is great for, I think, all of us as people become more educated.
And David, we've been talking about passenger cars quite a bit, but we know that many of the safety features required on them are not required on commercial vehicles, which is something that still surprises me, even though we know they save lives. There's no requirement for them. So could you give us a little bit of background on why it's possible for a heavy or a medium duty truck to not need features like AEB when we know that they're so useful?
Yeah, so the regulatory landscape is different, right? Between light vehicles, so it's less than 10,000 pounds or less, and the bigger, heavier ones. Some notable differences are we recently, right, or not we, but the federal government recently had regulation FMVSS 127, which is going to require AEB in all new vehicles in the coming years. That's only for light vehicles. There was a companion one that was focused on everything else, and that one, there's no movement there. It seems to be stalled. So purely AEB in the larger vehicles is something that's voluntarily offered by OEMs or required or requested by fleets when they do upfitting, right? One of the other interesting things that we've come across, right? Electronic stability control, which has been huge with reducing rollover crashes. For light vehicles, that's only required in the heaviest of vehicles, 26,001 pounds and heavier. But that medium duty area, those big cargo or the big pickups I showed, those ESC is not required. And so, part of the complication is you have a whole number of different vocations for commercial vehicles, a number of different uses. You have incomplete designs that are purchased by fleets that are then upfit or in multi-stage manufacturing for whatever required purpose. And so there may not, while safety is something that I think every single business wants to have a safe vehicle to protect their drivers, to protect their brand, it's not necessarily as present or as recognized when it comes to how important it is, or that seeking it out, you get that recognition. I mean, that's something that we are looking to fill that void, to provide that recognition, to provide that motivation for companies to seek out vehicles that have those safety features, specifically automatic emergency braking, to be able to tell them which vehicles, which chassis have ones that perform well, not only against vehicles that they could potentially run to the back of, but also pedestrians, also motorcyclists and whatnot.
And we know when businesses are watching every expense, it could be a tough sell to get them to add a cost to a vehicle because it might save them money in terms of crash prevention further down the line. Do you have any real world examples of where commercial fleets made investments in safety and saw it pay off?
Yeah, so different costs added to the vehicle to have safety features could be a deterrent, right? But the long-term benefits of crashes prevented, of injuries reduced, potentially nuclear verdicts, which is where you have a verdict in a legislative case of over $10 million, those avoided, those quickly outweigh any kind of costs. And so we've seen testimonials from companies like Boyle Transportation, Pitt, Ohio, which they've adopted crash mitigation or ADAS technology for many years. And they have come out in different type of publications said that where rear end crashes used to be something that it was the most common cause of loss, now it's one of the least common or frequent causes of loss, or that they potentially have removed a lot of this type of liability by adopting those type of technologies in their fleet. I think one of the things that we're hoping to help fleets as well as policymakers with is providing them with information, third-party independent information about what works, what type of potential benefits there are, as well as the tools, right? So part of it is it sounds great. AEB sounds great. I don't want to get in crashes, but what am I going to benefit? How much money do I have to potentially gain? When is it going to pay itself off? Simple calculators may be able to persuade a business that there is a case to put this money in upfront, even for small businesses too. So we're learning, what levers there are, how to be able to convince businesses that to do the right thing, the safe thing. And so those tools, I think, will be an important component to our efforts.
And I just want to separately give a shout out to IAHS for their role in helping disseminate the evidence based for intelligent speed assistance. This is something Road to Zero has promoted for years. Intelligent speed assistance being a way to limit a driver of a vehicle from traveling far over a speed limit in a dynamic way that can read signs or that can use GPS to adjust to whatever the speed limit is. And last year, we were very honored at NSC to give our Green Cross Award to New York City Department of Citywide Administrative Services for the project they've done in installing ISA on the city fleet. And part of that was actually the result of a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant from USDOT. So we see here how the continuing collaboration between safety organizations and government that comes across in organizations like Road to Zero is really helping disseminate these technologies and more. So Jennifer, we've just come out of Distracted Driving Awareness Month, and one central tenet of the safe system approach is that humans are going to make mistakes. Even the most trained, most cautious driver is going to make a mistake, and we're not going to be using our best judgment behind the wheel all the time. What do you see as the most promising vehicle technologies to help prevent distraction from turning into a crash?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right. We all make mistakes. We're all addicted to our cell phones. And I think that question often goes to distraction. Immediately, we start thinking about cell phone use while driving, right? There's a lot of other ways we can be distracted, cognitive distractions, talking in the car. But I think what a lot of us are talking about with distraction is that cell phone use. And those of us that drove here today, I think we all probably can admit that none of us, were free of that drive to go touch that cell phone. Right? They are a very addicted piece of equipment. There are things you can do. I think the most compelling data right now is showing that the telematics-based insurance is a real game changer. Having a true disincentive to go and reach for that cell phone. The do not disturb feature on the cell phone, that's another opportunity to remind yourself one more layer. If you turn it on your why I know this is because we're all guilty, so self-included, that if you go to touch your cell phone and you have that on, it asks you, are you driving? You got one more, am I? Yeah, maybe I am. Okay, all right, I'm gonna put it away. But really the trick is also just coaching yourself to put it out of reach. Like, we're all guilty of this. Driving through city streets, is that stoplight long enough? Can I just check that message? Has anyone messaged me? Integrating with your vehicle design of your Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, those things also help with the distractions to keep your eyes focused and not reaching for a cell phone. But I always recommend zip it away, put it in a purse, put it in a bag, put it in your backpack, put it in the back seat, integrate it with your phone, integrate your phone with your car. The other thing in the next, as I mentioned, 10 to 15 years out, is we're looking in that in-cabin monitoring more. So doing some vehicle technologies in-cabin monitoring for cell phone distraction. If you've seen some of the displays, we've gone to CES and other tech shows where you can sit in a mock cab of a vehicle and everything you do, whether eating or holding your cell phone up or even turning to talk to someone, everything is being monitored and deciphered by their algorithm. So that's really powerful. We have a new algorithm in our newest vehicle that's powered by the Smart Eye technology. And that's having that algorithm that's looking at driver drowsiness and inattention. And I've seen what they're doing for the future. And they've got some interesting opportunities around impairment and cell phone use and everything that can be distracting inside of a car. So it's a layered approach, but the vehicle technology is part of it. And we can't wait to get more in-cabin monitoring out there.
That's great. And what I want people to understand is that a lot of this is AI in action. We want to understand, what is the state of AI when it comes to driving. It's not just autonomous vehicles. These algorithms that can do things like take real-time measurements of where you're looking, where you're turning. That's a use of AI that's going to be out there to save lives. So next time you hear any, doom and gloom about what AI is going to do to us, There's a lot of positive in vehicle safety technology. So David, your ratings at IAHS are really like the safety carrot as opposed to the stick of regulations. And this year, you're introducing those ratings, as you said, for cargo vans and large pickups for the first time. What will it take, if you can tell us, for one of these vehicles to get a top safety rating, and how are they going to differ in these tests from the ones you already have for cars and SUVs?
Sure. So I'm not going to divulge the secret sauce. It's still being cooked, but it will be a little bit different. So right, like as I said, our top safety pick for passenger cars and top safety pick plus is basically combines all of the performance for different evaluations, making it easier for consumer to identify which vehicle is the safest. That's the end goal for commercial vehicles. But at this point, what we're doing, the way we're setting it up, will be almost like I said, a scorecard or a checklist where this vehicle meets these minimum set of requirements in each of these evaluations. And at the beginning, it'll just be noting which vehicles meet which requirements for which evaluation. Eventually, we will wrap it up into some sort of award that makes it easier for businesses as well as policymakers to identify those vehicles that are the safest. We are fortunate to have a partnership with the FIA Foundation and their Road Safety Index, where they have integrated our Top Safety Pick and Top Safety Pick Plus award into their Road Safety Index, so that when the company goes and assesses what their safety impact is for roadway safety, or their impact on safety road safety is, that if they don't have vehicles that meet our requirements, our safety requirements, they don't necessarily get full points. The commercial ratings and evaluation that we have, that'll be rolled into the Road Safety Index. And so that's basically amplifies what we can do on our own. And that's like been a theme of today, right? Is finding those partnerships, working together to be able to resonate the safety message with one another and make it part of the culture of, in this case, business or providing services, or just independent individual day-to-day lives, that safety is prominent.
And I see Natalie Drazen from FIA Foundation in the audience. FIA Foundation's been a wonderful partner of Road to Zero over the years, and I encourage everyone to look up their Road Safety Index, because it's really an innovative new approach that we want more companies to embrace. Jennifer, you've had a really interesting career trajectory. You've been on both ends of this work, the crash investigation at NTSB and now crash prevention at an automaker. I'm curious, really, what do you wish each side kind of knew about the other's work?
Well, we have so much more in common than we have apart. First of all, there are smart people in the government. There are smart people within the industry, and really, we all just want to get things done, right? We have our different roadblocks and our different hurdles in front of us, but we really just want to get things done. We're supportive of regulations in most cases, as long as they're doable, achievable, repeatable, reproducible in their testing. We are supportive of pushing the envelope on safety. And you can see that in the pure data-driven evidence of how many of these technologies have been deployed voluntarily. So even ahead of any regulations, as many of you know, there haven't been any really significant safety regulations in the last decade or so, up until the point of FMVSS 127, which is still contested. So in this space, in this void, look at all the safety technologies that have been deployed. What we have to do in the industry is start making decisions before there are regulations. We're not waiting for regulations. We know that the government has a really difficult job to do when it comes to pushing things through. ANPRM, NPRM, that is a really tough process. I commend any regulator that can get through that and publish a final rule. That's fantastic. We are supportive of that. We submit comments, and we really champion each other in many ways, champion and challenge each other in many ways. But the takeaway here is that we have so much in common, and the end of it is that we both want to get things done. We both want to reduce fatalities on our roadways. We want newer cars on the roadways. They're safer cars. We want our customers in safer cars. That's what our combined unified goal really is.
you. I've also been kind of on the both sides a bit more in terms of street design, starting as an advocate, going into local government, and now back in advocacy. And it is true that sometimes the people who are your biggest fans are also your biggest challengers, but they serve to help us all just do better in our work because we do want the same things.
Yeah, and I'll just put a finer point on that. I often tell within my own company, I always say I'm a safety advocate first and a Mazda employee second. That's what they got. And sometimes that requires a lot of internal pushing. And just an example of that, I was working for Mazda about 3 years, just out of the government, and blind spot monitoring hadn't been standard on all of our vehicles. We still had a few base trims of some of the smaller cars that did not have the blind spot monitoring and the rear cross traffic alert as standard. But I was able to approach in a very data-driven way saying, listen, these technologies are reducing sideswipe crashes, they're reducing insurance claims. We had done some of the work with the Insurance Institute at that point, and was able to convince them that our customers deserved that technology as standard. They didn't have to second guess and go, oh, did I buy a vehicle equipped with that when I bought a new car for my teen that was only $25,000 or a cheaper car? We wanted to make sure that everyone got that technology, regardless of price point. And I pushed and I pushed and I was very persistent. And now all of our vehicles have that. And it's part of why Mazda was recently named as the safest new car brand by Consumer Reports, is because of that. Standard equipment is a piece of that, is making sure that those technologies aren't built in at a trim level, but the ones that are truly safety technologies, the ones that have a proven safety benefit, that the industry is bringing them in. So I'm oftentimes that advocate internally within my car company, and I know that I'm not alone in that. I have colleagues at every OEM here in DC. There's many of our peers that we're doing that. We're the voices. We're your voices inside the industry.
And just to add on to that, that's where the work that IHS does, the work that National Safety Council does, and others do, that provides safety advocates within the industry tools or ammunition, for lack of a better word, right, to be able to make a compelling argument internally about why this vehicle should have these additional safety features, why safety matters. Sometimes that argument has to be made over, I want glass all over the roof and all over the car so I can see the world around me, right? Because that's paramount, not safety. But if you can give that data, you give those, well, IHS is going to have a new test and we're going to get crushed if we don't, adhere to this. That motivation is very important. So, that has proven, has really helped out get the importance of our tests and get manufacturers to voluntarily, do well in our tests. Is that partnership, that relationship. And we've heard from Jennifer, but also representatives from industry, that was the tipping point. Knowing that IHS or some other kind of independent organization was going to put weight onto some sort of safety countermeasure, that allowed them to upgrade the safety of their vehicle and their product.
Yep, your ratings create the market for that in many ways.
Exactly.
And I appreciate safety as standard because my dad's actually on his third Miata of my lifetime. So and one final question is we've heard quite a bit, I think, in recent months about the high price of new vehicles. There's a lot of factors going into that, but I'm wondering, both of you, how do you think automakers can push back on the misconception that it's vehicle safety improvements that are the thing driving higher prices?
Yeah, so safety and affordability are not like opposing forces, right? There are plenty of examples of vehicles that are priced on the lower side. So vehicles today run anywhere between, $25,000 all the way up to like over $100,000, right? But on that lower spectrum, there are vehicles that are earning top Safety Pick Plus awards that are equipped with all of the sensors that I just showed you. And what we've really learned is that we can pack a lot in with safety technologies at a really affordable price point because those sensors have been proven. They're efficient, and you get the hardware on, and then you add additional software, right, a development, and make it better. And then you're always making those technologies better and better. You're not always having to add hardware. You're just making your hardware work smarter for you. And that's really where we've focused. And that really hasn't driven up cost. It's the adding of additional hardwares that now we do have to be really careful about when that's going to happen because we don't want to add any cost. An example is that interior cabin monitoring and cameras. Additional cameras can be expensive, but if you do it gradually and thoughtfully, there is a way to also do it affordably. There are a lot of other things on vehicles today that are so much more expensive than safety technology. So we really need to dispel that linkage between, oh, it's the safety technology driving up the cost of vehicles. It really is these massive vehicles that people, consumer choice, they really want these big SUVs. At times it's things like, ventilated seats and heated mirrors, and those are more expensive than some of those technologies I just showed you. So don't let it be safety that gets the cost argument confused.
Yeah, I would second all of that. I mean, things like automatic emergency braking, we started our program to motivate manufacturers to equip vehicles with that technology in 2013. So that's been around for a very long time. And there are a lot of used as well as, like you said, new, but that you can go out and buy a used vehicle with automatic emergency braking for less than $20,000. It may not be exactly what you had hoped for, right? But you can get it. So you could safety. You don't have to be flush with cash to be able to afford safety. And we're very cognizant of that. Now, if you want to go out, buy your big SUV with a 18-inch center console display and the latest and greatest partial driving automation system, that's going to come with a price tag, right? So these convenience features, those are another bin that is driving up costs. Can't tell you what specifically, how it parses out. Another thing to consider is component costs, the influence of policy, both and as well as labor. There's a whole bunch of different things that go into the cost of a vehicle, safety being only one of them, but that's been around for a while. All those sensors and hardware that drive a lot of this, that cost has been in the vehicle for a long time.
And if I recall correctly, your latest batch of the IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus actually did include several vehicles that were about 30,000 or lower. So definitely there are options, and we're grateful to IIHS for showing them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no vans. I drive a van, so that was unfortunate. But yeah, you can
Sorry,
get
Mazda doesn't make a minivan anymore, but we'll work on that for you.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
David, we'll work on that.
Well, thank you to both my panelists for all your insights here, and we really appreciate it. And we're hoping that you'll continue to stay in touch with Road to Zero, and we'll be able to continue this interaction and this knowledge sharing for all of our benefit. Thank you very much. And now we're going to take a bit of a coffee break. You can get up and stretch. Our restrooms are right through the door in the back there, where you see the arrow. We'll have coffee and pastries out here in the lobby, and we hope to see you back in about 10 minutes for some more grantee videos, our second panel, and an update from National Safety Council. Thank you.
I didn't recognize it. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's what he said. He was there. I love when I don't. Great. I mean, not that
well, I mean,
especially guys are sure about these.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. Right, yeah.
We do a lot of like yeah. Our manufacturers. Oh.
Yeah,
So yeah. I mean,
But they're not. Yeah.
Yes, I know. This is
Yeah.
It's difficult, right? I mean, we see. We gotta be clear that any kind of seatbelt. I think it's a bad. It's good.
Yeah. But they, like,
Yeah.
you know,
That's exactly what we want here.
It's my transition.
Okay. Where?
Yeah, so I think
Did, that was an hour.
to think about it, you know.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like,
Works all the way back. We don't take this. Takes all night to get them.
Just
No, that's how I was invited.
Right?
Yeah, man. But I heard.
One of you guys is down.
Come back to the station, enter. All right, guys. Yeah, you made this.
Actually, now I work.
like,
Oh, really?
right, and it's like a session.
But,
And
yeah, so essentially.
Look, man, I'm
it'll be longer.
I didn't know this was showing up. So like nobody. I mean, so we usually.
We can,
Jeremy.
Not.
It's like,
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, you guys do, we have fewer good stations. But you know,
Stop.
wants to be right there. What does that look like? So, yeah, we have an idea of what that might be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Notice.
Definitely larger than the state.
You know what I mean?
Shared.
Yes, New York, along with state law. You know,
Right.
But
Yeah.
I had the idea of a showcase. TV safety showcase. They desire to stand up. Where you're just showing.
Myself.
Idea.
Yeah. Want to go there?
Like, no, it is. Like, let's have no party.
About that.
I mean, it's great. Why are you gonna? It's all, yeah. Yeah, it's up to 18 million. So like the whole language around, like, I think,
And then anything.
I don't want to say you're falling into. Yeah, we're like. Right. So initially when they used that. Yeah, now it's 5, now it's saying 10.
I didn't know.
$1 higher. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and so that could be a lot of.
Instead of doing safer. So in Florida, you're going to index, but like the sure, you didn't know. What is the bottom tier rate?
The very
yeah, you're great with this team. Yeah. I think. Yeah, so I'll send you that. But we have, I mean, we have friends though, right? In the sense of.
We have each
Oh,
other's.
yeah. Check this. Basically sitting up. Lunch and all that. I know people. Steve.
You guys.
Different slices, steak. It's a play, like this will serve us. This is a game like.
How's it going? Yeah,
Innovation. That's what we're. It's been mostly like. Oh, John. Yes, I will. So many. A lot of
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have.
Yeah.
I don't know, do you have like? So, I mean.
Actually, doing all this stuff.
But all that.
So many ways to attack it.
They did.
Yeah.
It's all the.
Yeah, that's great.
We have our lower survey.
No.
Also, and get me about yeah, we like. One of my
Okay, thank you, everyone. If you could please start moving back to your seats and we'll continue with the program momentarily.
Maybe in a small bridge. Never got. You too, darling.
Raining.
For those of you in the room here, feel free to bring your drinks and your food back to your table.
Any information better than zero.
That's probably.
And then he went straight. The best way is to because you have a lot of paddles and trees. Right.
You know, I have to tell them, and I'm currently.
But again, yeah.
So we have to do it in the morning.
Right. Right.
A lot more target.
If you could please take your seats,
He's running.
and we'll continue with the program. Okay, welcome back for the second half of our Road to Zero annual meeting. We awarded 6 grants in our 2025 through 2026 cohorts, and we've spoken a lot today so far on technology in terms of vehicles. So the next 2 videos that we'd like to show both come from university researchers who are exploring aspects of AI in terms of keeping people safe on America's roadways. The first video is from Johns Hopkins University, and the principal investigator is Dr. Feng Zhu. He's studying how to keep occupants safe in the type of non-traditional seating positions that you see in a lot of the autonomous vehicles currently on our road as robotaxis, or through plans for the future of what those vehicles are going to look like. Then we also have a short video from the University of Texas, San Antonio. The investigator is Dr. Hatim Sharif, and he's using something called geospatial AI to try to determine a way in which we don't need to wait for crashes to happen in order for, say, a local government to determine where they need to make investments in road safety. Instead, we can use AI to try to predict where those crashes could potentially happen and intervene before there's a tragedy, part of the safe system element of safety being proactive. So if I could please have your attention, hopefully this will go off without a hitch now.
Not great.
Hello everyone, my name is Feng Zhu. I'm a faculty member of Johns Hopkins University and the recipient of 2025 Road to Zero Traffic Safety Grant. Background and motivation. Why do we study occupant safety in self-driving cars? The motivation is this. We know that the autonomous vehicle or self-driving cars allow seats to turn and recline. As we can see in these figures, this complex seat configuration and sitting posture can create some new safety concerns that today's car designs were not built to handle. These are our research objectives. Number 1, we want to learn how people are hurt during crashes involving autonomous vehicle, that is injury mechanisms, especially when the car seats are turned or lean back instead of facing forward. Number 2, we want to use computer-based testing methods, which also known as computer simulations or numerical simulations, to study crash injuries without putting a real human body at risk. In addition, we want to use artificial intelligence or AI to quickly predict safer seating positions. This information can help designers further improve the safety countermeasures more efficiently. The last task of this project is to create a new safety idea that can help protect people before a crash happens by moving the car seats into safer positions automatically. On this page, we can see some examples of the frontal crash simulations for normal posture, for reclined posture, and for relaxed posture, which is also known as zero gravity state. The last task is design a rotating seat. Simulations will determine the optimal seat rotation angle for different combinations of impact, velocity, and seat configuration. And then the car seat will rotate to this angle that can minimize the injury. Finally, I would like to thank our sponsor, NSC, for the financial support.
My name is Hatim Sharif, a professor of civil engineering at the University of Texas at San Antonio. This is an update on an NSC Road to Zero project on developing a geospatial AI tool to predict pedestrian crash risk in San Antonio before crashes occur. The core problem we address is that most transportation agencies only react to crashes that have already happened. This project tries to build a proactive alternative organized around 4 tasks: a literature review to establish the methodological foundation, data compilation to build the training data sets, and tool development to produce predictive risk scores. Finally, a community outreach to ensure findings reach the population most at risk. The proposed tool is organized into 3 sequential, mutually reinforcing modules. Module 1, HIN mapping, diagnoses where crash risk is already manifesting by severity weighting historical crashes and adjusting for exposure. Module 2, RTM plus AI ML, moves from description to prediction, forecasting risk at location with no crash history yet. Module 3, the solution plan, translate those predictions into a ranked, costed list of specific intervention the city can act on immediately. Each module produces standalone deliverables, but together they form a complete proactive safety system. 2 of 4 milestones have been met on schedule. Funding utilization is on target. There is no change in key personnel, and there are no cost overruns or underruns to report. We have 4 immediate priorities now. Finalize the task 2 data sets, continue tasks 3 model refinement and begin dashboard development, initiate task 4 stakeholder engagement starting with TxDOT and COSA briefings, and submit the final project deliverables. Finally, I would like to thank the NSC for its support.
Thank you. So as you've just seen there, and as you've seen in our other presentations and in the 2 that we'll have before the end of the day, NSC grants are supporting the type of innovations that we hope will become commonplace, everyday, no-brainer solutions tomorrow. And we've seen a lot of that in terms of what our early work produced, in terms of People's Vision Zero action plans or street redesigns. And I think as Road to Zero has evolved, we've been going in the direction of really trying to find what are going to be the things that we'll want to double down on tomorrow. And our the incredible brain power behind these projects that we fund is figuring out what works. So with that, I'd like to move on to our next panel, because for the past decade, Road to Zero has emphasized this importance of doubling down on what works. It means determining which policies and practices actually have the evidence for efficacy, and then trying to disseminate them throughout our network as widely as possible so they can be enacted. And experts of road safety not only have the proof of what works, but they're also really well positioned to know what's in the pipeline and what's coming next in terms of where we can see promise in terms of serving the problems that can seem really intractable. And the challenge really is overcoming the roadblocks to greater implementation, whether it's in legislation or engineering practice or the encouragement of behavioral change. In this panel discussion, we're going to be focusing on the big 3, the big largest causes of roadway deaths: intoxication, excessive speed, and distraction. The panelists are going to share the most promising innovations in their field and illuminate what steps need to be taken in order to make sure these solutions make the leap from the pages of studies to the roadways of the United States. So please welcome our panelists to the stage. They'll be giving short presentations on their topics, and then we'll have a discussion. Stephanie Manning from MAD is joining us remotely today, so we will patch her in. I will advance your slides, Stephanie, if you if you give me the cue to go forward if I'm a little slow on that. But please welcome Matt Hardy and Jordan Blenner to the stage as well. Thank you. So I'd like to introduce Stephanie Manning, joining remotely, the Chief Government Affairs Officer at MAD. And she has specialized in traffic safety policy for 25 years. When it comes to driving while intoxicated, she is your expert. She's worked on both behavioral safety and vehicle safety related policy, including the establishment of the national 0.08 blood alcohol content standard. And more recently, she's been working on legislation to mandate advanced drunk driving prevention technology. And she's worked very closely with the administration and with Congress to strengthen policies for victims' rights and to secure funding for drunk driving and underage drinking prevention. So I will hand it over to Stephanie remotely.
Thanks, everybody. And I just want to say my apologies for not being there today or being on screen. I had a health issue come up, and that's the only reason I'm not with you today. But I still wanted to join and present on the topic. So first of all, thank you for having me, and appreciate the focus on doubling down on what works. I'm going to talk mostly about our efforts around the HALT Drunk Driving Act, and we'll get started just with some brief background. Next. So just, the starting point has to be from MAD's perspective. We represent victims and survivors of drunk driving and all substance impaired driving. We actually serve, a lot of people don't realize, we serve over 10,000 victims of impaired driving every single year at no cost. We work with victims and survivors every single day and hear about endless tragedy and difficulties through the adjudication process that we help folks through. Our number one objective is prevention and stopping this crime altogether. And as everybody here knows, since 2019, we saw a 17% increase in the number of drunk driving deaths and hundreds of thousands of people injured. We're still not back to pre-COVID levels, even though there has been some progress. It's still alarming after 45 years of victims and survivors and working in this space that this crime is still happening at the level of frequency that it occurs at, and that it's still unfortunately accepted at a level that just is astounding to those of us working in this space. And I also just want to flag the actual cost of alcohol impaired crashes to society, $296 billion just in 2019 alone. Next. A lot of, and this is one victim family that we work with, Elisa McMorris, the McMorris family. I'll just point out, she's holding a picture of her son, Andrew, who was actually hiking with his Boy Scout troop on a beautiful Sunday afternoon in Long Island and was crossing a road to get to another part of the trail and was on one side of the road when a drunk driver ran into the entire Boy Scout troop, killing Andrew and injuring many others. And that drunk driver had been golfing at a local golf course, had tried to convince him to not drive home. He insisted on it, and then this tragedy occurred. We work with families like the McMorris family every single day. And just to kind of bring some more light to some of the statistics, every 89 seconds, someone is killed or injured in a drunk driving crash. And every day, this crime kills 32 people. We also, again, we serve more victims than we'd like. And another thing that people don't realize is that offenders drive drunk typically 80 to 88 times before their first arrest. And law enforcement is the front lines. They're heroes on the roadways. But unfortunately, we need more. And we can't rely on law enforcement for everything, although their work is incredibly important. And we saw when enforcement went down during COVID, deaths went up, risky driving behaviors went up. But we do need to make sure that we're bringing other parts of the safe systems approach into this work as well. Next. And that's why MADD is so focused on the Halt Drunk Driving law. This is a bipartisan law. We'll go to the next slide, which many of you are aware of, was named after this beautiful family, the Abbas family. So the Honoring the Abbas Family Legacy to Terminate Drunk Driving Act was passed as part of the IIJA, the Surface Transportation Bill, back in 2021. And it requires a federal motor vehicle safety standard for anti-drunk driving technology to be built into all new passenger vehicles. And again, this is the family that lived outside of Detroit, Michigan. Rima is the mother and wife in this photo. Her sister, Rena Abbas Taylor, has been very engaged with MADD since about 10 months after the crash, and really worked with the Michigan delegation and a bipartisan group of leaders in Congress to get this done after this beautiful family of 5 was killed in a wrong-way drunk driving crash, January of 2019. The driver was 4 times the legal limit. And Rena also actually worked very hard with the local community on server training. The gentleman was overserved at several bars before that crash. Next slide. So the key here is that when this law is implemented, more than 10,000 lives will be saved every year. And that's according to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. This is not an ignition interlock. It is not a device that the driver would have to take any action to start their car. The driver gets in, and by the time they put their seatbelt on, at least with certain types of the technology, the car would know if the driver was at 0.08 or above, and would determine if the car, if the driver could operate that vehicle. Again, when you think about all of the different safety features on vehicles today, the only thing that comes close or that exceeds that 10,000 lives a year is the seatbelt. And a lot of the same commentary or negative commentary that we hear from a minority on this issue talks in a very similar way that folks talked about in the 80s regarding the seatbelt or airbags. There were a lot of people that spoke out and talked about personal freedom. Don't tread on me. Don't tell me what to do. And that's with respect to buckling up yourself or your kids in your car. We're talking here, and now that's just accepted. Everybody or most people wear their seatbelts. We've got 92+% usage rate. We still obviously have more to go. But when we're talking about drunk driving, the driver is not just putting themselves at risk or the occupants of their car at risk. They're putting everybody on the road at risk. And we can stop it with vehicle technology. Again, built-in passive vehicle technology that can determine whether that driver can legally operate that vehicle. We don't specify, or the law doesn't specify, one specific type of technology or approach. It's designed so that companies can compete to meet the standard and come up with different solutions. Next. So what is anti-drunk driving technology? They're sort of 3 different categories is how we like to talk about this, but it's always evolving and things are being invented, literally at lightning speed. It's pretty incredible to talk with suppliers and OEMs. I just got back from NHTSA's ESV conference where we met with a lot of folks in the auto industry, and they're talking with us about the work that they're doing in this space, including breath-based technology, touch-based technology, and tracking eye movement and head movement through DMS systems that Jennifer was talking about. And if the driver is intoxicated, the technology will either not allow the vehicle to move, or it could turn on but not operate. Or if the vehicle is actually in motion, then and the car determines that the driver is impaired, the vehicle could, for instance, slow down, reduce speed significantly, potentially pull over to a safe location. And that's another piece of this that is being debated right now in terms of the implementation side. What types of technologies are we looking at? And then what does the car do once the car determines impairment? So those are sort of the 2 big pieces around this issue. And again, I'll just state that this technology is not a breathalyzer or ignition interlock. It is passive and does not need driver engagement. The driver just gets in the car as he or she does today. And the only people affected by this are those attempting to drive drunk. Next. Now, we hear a lot about technology readiness. We get a lot of questions about this from congressional offices. NHTSA talks about this. Suppliers and OEMs talk about this. The Insurance Institute. There's been a lot of discussion for about 15 years regarding tech readiness. And we at MAD essentially say that this technology is ready. It's a question of who's going to be willing to take that first step. Regardless of the type of technology, this technology, whether it is breath-based, touch-based, or DMS, could be deployed now. Would it be perfect? Would there be some issues that need to be worked out? Potentially. We'll just talk about one as an example, the DADS program, and I'll get into that more in a moment. There are some concerns about, for example, false positives with the DADS program, a breath-based system that was actually funded by taxpayer dollars and the federal government and also by the auto industry for about 18 years. That's been in development, and it is very accurate at 0.08, but not perfect. And so what we're saying is, let's not let perfect be the enemy of the good. We could deploy that technology at a higher BAC level just to get it out there. And if there's still concern about accuracy, it could start, for example, with a warning. What we're saying at MAD is we can't wait until absolute perfection. There's nothing that's absolutely perfect on vehicles today, but we could actually start saving lives now. Maybe we don't save over 10,000 lives a year. Maybe we save 7,000 lives a year. But to say that the technology isn't ready after years and years and years of development, regardless of the type of technology, we say, let's just get started and let's figure out a way to start getting this tech deployed and improving it on vehicles today and working with customers and consumers to see what they would accept at this point, which we believe, based on consumer research from not only MAD, Johns Hopkins, and the auto industry, consumers really do think this is a good idea and would like the technology on their vehicles. Next. So here is the government industry investment that I had mentioned, the DADS program, the Driver Alcohol Detection System for Safety. This is something that MAD and the auto industry actually lobbied for. The first meeting that we did was back in 2007 with the Automotive Coalition for Traffic Safety. We were able to secure funding for this partnership. And back then it was about, is this possible? Could there be a technology invented that can determine if a driver is at the illegal limit? And now we have the head of the DADS program who came to MAD's 45th anniversary event this past September that said, yes, we did it. We have invented this technology. We can start deploying the technology. We can hand it over to manufacturers and suppliers. And at that event, DADS leadership did announce that the design package would be provided to auto manufacturers by the end of the year to look at how to integrate into new vehicles. Now, cost has also been a factor. As Jennifer and others have talked about, the Insurance Institute as well, looking at the cost of vehicles today. What we're looking at is $150 to $200 initially, and that would decrease as manufacturing ramps up and it goes to scale. There are other technologies that, including DMS sensors, that are already on a lot of vehicles where it's a software upgrade, an over-the-air update. And we're hearing, single-digit dollars for some of that technology, and it could be deployed literally now. Next. So just to kind of throw out some of the milestones that I've touched on a little bit already, 2021 is when the Halt Drunk Driving Law was enacted, and again, with strong bipartisan support, congressional hearings. 2023, it's an interesting quote that the CEO of General Motors, in response to a question at the DC Economic Forum, said, I think that's technology that's coming that I think is going to be good for everyone. GM has been a big investor in the DADS program for a long time and has been, working with MAD and others on impaired driving prevention generally. And we're certainly hoping that at some point in the not too distant future, we do see deployment from GM and a lot of others in this space. This is really significant. 2025 IHS top safety picks, and I know I want to wrap up soon, but it's really important to note that at MAD's 45th anniversary, the Insurance Institute, David Harkey was there announcing that impairment detection would be added to its top safety picks plus award criteria for new vehicles by or before 2030. That was an extremely exciting development because we still don't have the federal regulation in place, and rulemaking for this administration is challenging. We're not sure if that's in the cards for this administration, even though we continue to have discussions with them and thinking about how to move this forward. IHS making this announcement means we are going to see tech deployment in the next few years. We also have had really great announcements from Seeing Machines, DADS, Euro NCAP, Smart Eye, and others, announcing that they do have the ability through algorithms to detect alcohol impairment with DMS. We had Smart Eye announcing DMS delivery in 2 Japanese vehicles in 2028 that include alcohol impairment detection. And Euro NCAP did add points to assist its system, similar to what the Insurance Institute announced, which means we're going to see this technology deployed in Europe. And I will just add before wrapping up that without the Halt Drunk Driving Act, none of this would have happened. We don't believe that Euro NCAP would have made their decision or IHS would have made their decision. The Halt Drunk Driving Act really signaled that there's a change coming and that at some point this technology will be on cars. It's a question of when, not if, and that's really exciting. Next, I've got a couple more slides, but I do want to wrap up because I think I'm over time. We do address privacy. We agree with a lot of the narrative out there that we do not want people's data shared, stored, or sold. There are sensors that are purely there for prevention. There's no law enforcement involved. There's no government involved. There's no surveillance involved. It is purely a system that prevents drunk driving. And I know there's a couple more slides, but I'll go ahead and wrap up and we'll hold until questions at the end. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate the time.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. And we're very happy to hear that happy 45th anniversary to MAD. And I really think the reason MAD is such a household name is because they do such an effective job of melding the technical with the personal and the stories behind why we do what we do.
Thank you. And these folks on your screen, they're the ones who really get all this done. Our victims and survivors are incredible.
Thank you. And now I'd like to turn it over to Matt Hardy, the Deputy Executive Director and Chief Technical Officer with the Institute of Transportation Engineers, or ITE. He oversees all aspects of the technical program and work of the organization. He previously served as a Senior Program Director of Planning and Performance Measurements at AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. And he's also an adjunct professor at George Mason University, teaching classes in engineering and public policy. So he is going to be speaking about the role of speed management. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you. All right, quick survey. Who's ever not sped before in their cars? Raise your hand. Not sped. Have you not done speeding in your vehicles? All right. Yeah. So that's good, right? Because I think we're all part of, I wouldn't say a big problem, but we're part of the problem. I think we all speed in some way. The other one that I'm going to kind of get into is who's actually read through the manual on uniform traffic control devices? All pages? Okay. Who's read through section 2B.21? There'll be a test. Okay. I'll be talking about that as well. Speed is an important issue from an engineering perspective. What ITE is focusing in on is how do we manage speeds? How do we reduce speeds? Everybody knows about the wheel, the safe system approach wheel, right? Engineers hate this because it's a circle. We don't like circles for some reason, I would say. But the safe system approach really talks about how do we design a transportation system, a transportation network that looks at safe road users, safe vehicles, safe speeds, safe roads, and then post-crash care. Our goal at ITE, our vision, is that we have 0 road fatalities. And speed is a contributing factor to a lot of the serious crashes, the crashes that happen, resulting in serious injuries, fatalities, that sort of thing. So 0 is our goal. That's what we want to achieve. It's going to be hard. My dad said nothing hard is ever easy, but doesn't mean that we shouldn't be working towards it, even if we know we can't get to it tomorrow. Our vision, the way we want to frame this, is through the safe system approach, which is right now that wheel. One aspect that many agencies are looking at when we think about safe speeds, when we think about the manual on uniform traffic control devices, some additional information and guidance that went in there is context. And when we think about context, when I think about context, it's about land use. So many feel like that a sixth part of that wheel is that land use context. And you'll see throughout the U.S., many agencies kind of adding it into that. If you look at Washington State DOT, they are considering land use. And one approach that we are looking at is kind of reinventing the wheel, looking at it from this sort of pyramid perspective in terms of what are the things that we can do that will have the biggest impact, the biggest positive impact on achieving 0 road fatalities. And for us, it gets at this, the pyramid, looking at the foundational things. What is it that we can do at the foundational level that can impact or affect the entire population? And I bring up land use because that's kind of the red, that bottom layer there, right? Can we change the land use? Can we affect the land use that affects demand so that we can reduce the need for people to always have to drive, right? Always have to be in their vehicle, always have to look at the speed, what speed are they going in their vehicle. So at ITE, we're taking this one on, really looking at what are those sort of land use decisions, what are the engineering decisions, all the way up through the individual change. How can we change the way individuals, perceive or drive, that cultural aspect? And that tip, that's the hardest one to affect and might have the least impact. If we can change some of the other aspects of that pyramid further down, we might be able to have a larger impact at a lower cost in general. That's the sort of the general idea of what we're looking at through the safe system pyramid. When we look at speed, the way we are looking at it, ITE, for me, from a very logical sort of engineering approach, is what are all these different risks that kind of get at kinetic energy, right? And the issue with speeding is that sudden stop, right? The more speed you have, the more kinetic energy has to be, distributed and stopped, and that's really what causes those serious injuries, those fatalities. So we're looking at different risk factors: exposure, severity, likelihood. So for exposure, it's demand management. Land use, how can we make it so that people don't always have to drive, right? Are there other ways? For severity, it could be about speed management. What are those engineering aspects to kind of reduce drivers speeding in general? And then likelihood, the idea of conflict management. Again, some of those sort of engineering solutions. We do take this sort of that framework of exposure, severity, and likelihood, and we apply it to this idea of the safe system pyramid. So demand management, right? Land use. Typically, historically, as a transportation engineer, I went through the civil engineering program. Land use is an input to what we think about as the transportation system. But the two are intrinsically linked together. You change the land use system, you're going to change the transportation system, and then vice versa. For whatever reason, for simplicity, for lack of time, we look at them separately, but there's a land use planning, there's also a transportation planning, and we have to look at those things together, combined. So then we can look at severity, speed management, at different aspects of that safe system pyramid, and then the likelihood of a crash occurring. We can look at conflict management, and there are engineering solutions that we can look at, the idea of the FHWA proven safety countermeasures, other aspects that we can use to try to, again, reduce speeding, reduce the exposure, reduce the severity, reduce the likelihood, which would all go into reducing that kinetic energy when it comes to speeding. I think many of us know that the idea of the slower you go and you get into a crash with a pedestrian or a bicyclist, somebody outside of the vehicle or even inside the vehicle, the more likely you are to walk away from that crash, right? So the faster you're going, the more, and you hit somebody, the more likely you are for that crash to result in a serious injury or a fatality. It's not linear. It is a non-linear relationship. You get up to 45, 50, 75 miles per hour, it's almost exponential. So I think we all understand that. Trying to explain that to others becomes a challenging part of it. But again, small reductions in those speeds can save lives. And again, we are using that, the safe system approach. So lots of communities are doing lots of things. In California, Caltrans, the DOT, has taken an approach that gives localities more flexibility in how they set speeds. Specific, my eyes are not this great. Specific cities, Riverside, Santa Rosa, doing a lot when it comes to that systemic context. The context is important in terms of setting speeds. Others, there's 20 is Plenty in 2021 when Madison, Wisconsin started that. Some projects in Austin, Texas, and then finally Arlington, Virginia, right across the river, right near where I live, have a permanent 20 mile per hour speed limit for neighborhood streets within 600 feet of a school zone. Where I live, also near Falls Church, they've taken the 20 is Plenty as well. And there's lots of great data out there showing that the results are positive, that you can significantly reduce those fatal crashes, those serious injury crashes by reducing speeds. I mentioned did the survey of the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. Great document. I would highly encourage you to kind of read through it if you need to go to sleep at night. But there are some major changes that happen between the 10th and the 11th edition when it comes to speeding specifically. In the 10th edition, it was really about engineering studies looking at free flow of vehicles. In the 11th edition, there was a lot more language about context setting, the land use, the context of where that road is in terms of setting that speed limit, mitigating or reducing that 85th percentile, that is not the gold standard that you must look at or use. There are other aspects to setting speed limits, which in many cases might be even more important. So finally, wrapping up, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. FHWA has their proven safety countermeasures. Encourage people to kind of go look at those from that sort of engineering solution. We also have a recommended practice sort of guidance coming out on implementing the safe system approach for public agencies. So for locals, for states, for whomever wants to look at that, we'll have some guidance. The last thing that I want to end with is that we have a big effort at ITE this year with our ITE Safety Partner Pledge. We would encourage, I know everybody has a device here, everybody get it out, come on. Take a picture of the QR code, go there, commit to being an ITE safety partner. We have 10 things that you could do. We also have blanks in there for things that you want to do, right? What do you have control over to really be that leader, to be that a safety partner? So I would encourage you to take the ITE Safety Partner Pledge. Please do so. It's voluntary. So with that, I will stop there. And
thank you very much. And thank you, ITE, for your partnership on the Road to Zero Steering Committee as well. You've been an excellent resource. And finally, I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Jordan Blenner, who's the Data and Experimental Research Group Leader at the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, which she's been in this position since May 2025. So congratulations on a year. Previously, she was a research psychologist with NHTSA, and over her professional career, she's conducted and managed multiple traffic safety studies on topics such as cell phone use among younger drivers and drowsy driving. She's going to be speaking to us about distraction. So I'll, without further ado, over to you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Jordan Blenner. I'm the Data and Experimental Research Group Leader for the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, and I will be talking about distracted driving challenges and countermeasures. I'm first going to give an introduction to the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, followed by where we're at with distracted driving within the United States, some challenges facing prevention of distracted driving, and finally, some research perspectives on countermeasures. The AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety is a nonprofit Section 501c3 organization founded by AAA. Our mission is to identify traffic safety problems, foster research that seeks solutions, and disseminate information and educational materials. The AAA Foundation has been researching distracted driving for some time, and we, along with AAA Incorporated and the AAA clubs, believe this to be a very important topic. Here are some of our more recent reports as we continue to study this topic, and as you can see, we have our QR code, which will take you to our research. Now let's get into distracted driving within the United States. In 2024, over 3,000 people were killed and 315,000 people injured in distracted driving crashes, and this is likely to be underreported. The AAA Foundation's 2024 Traffic Safety Culture Index indicates that people know that distracted driving is risky. That's the left-hand side of the screen where it says they consider it to be very dangerous or extremely dangerous. There's a lot of social disapproval of distracted driving engagement, and there's a lot of support for laws regarding distracted driving. However, people continue to engage in distracted driving, with the percentages of engagement based on the type of distracted driving behavior. The 11% was those who were scrolling on their phones while driving, and there's about 28 to 37% who read or text or read texts, send texts, or answer their phones while driving. So what are some of the challenges facing prevention of distracted driving? We conducted some research with stakeholders in the field to ask them what they saw as some of the challenges they're facing. First, data limitations. Distracted driving is difficult to measure, which makes it hard to determine its prevalence, impacts, and outcomes. Because of these limitations, many interviewees noted that distracted driving is likely to be underestimated and, in turn, underprioritized and underfunded. It is also difficult to evaluate the effectiveness of interventions because of the data limitations. There are inaccuracies and/or inconsistencies in crash data collection, as well as there are challenges faced by police officers in determining distracted driving from crashes without clear evidence that distraction was engaged in. In addition, there are legislative limitations as well. Stakeholders discussed how some of the laws that we have are weak or poorly worded, or there are absence of laws altogether. The legislative limitations then have implications for enforcement and other countermeasures for distracted driving. Finally, the third challenge facing prevention of distracted driving are resources. Stakeholders cited a lack of resources, both financial and personnel, with the two being inextricably intertwined. One interviewee noted a lack of federal, state, or local resources for supporting distracted driving countermeasures. So what are some of the countermeasures, and what does our research suggest is their efficacy? We conducted a literature review of the scientific and gray literature and found that in terms of educational and behavioral countermeasures, the effects of messaging and campaigns, recent studies suggest that specific content in messaging or campaigns has been shown to be generally positive, but occasionally having conflicting results. Studies have shown that there are improvements in the target group's understanding of risks associated with distraction and a higher motivation to change behaviors, among other measures. However, there remains some uncertainty regarding the long-term effects, as well as the translation to actual on-road behaviors. In terms of smartphone app-based feedback. Some research indicates improvements from this kind of feedback. However, a AAA Foundation study that was recently conducted on user-based insurance found that while treatment participants exhibited improvements in speeding, hard braking, and rapid acceleration when they were given this feedback, they did not show improvements in terms of handheld phone use. Now, it's important to remember this is one study, but it does suggest that this needs to be studied in greater detail. For legislative and policy countermeasures, the majority of evaluations of all driver handheld cell phone bans have indicated favorable reductions in handheld phone use. Evaluations looking at fatal or injury crashes are less conclusive. In terms of enforcement, studies suggest that visible enforcement and in some cases higher conspicuity of roadside police can reduce distracted driving or behavior or self-reported intentions to perform distracting activities in drivers. Overall, this is a class of countermeasures that suffers from a paucity of research. We need to conduct more research to see about the effectiveness of this strategy. And finally, in terms of technology, for do not disturb blocking technology, there is some research providing positive outcomes in terms of behaviors and performance, some of which is longer lasting, up to 2 to 3 months. However, other research indicates that only about 20% of smartphone users use Do Not Disturb, which suggests that most drivers are not choosing to use this kind of technology. So what can we do? How can we improve the effectiveness of countermeasures? First and foremost, funding to support the programs. Second, expanding the target distractions and the drivers that are targeted. Again, we always think of smartphones when we're talking about distracted driving, but there are many different ways that a person can drive distracted, including reaching for objects, interacting with in-vehicle technologies, eating and drinking, and we should target those as well. We can also extend the target beyond young drivers. Drivers of all ages engage in distracted driving behaviors. Third, we can develop smartphone-based countermeasures. Few of these countermeasures have been formally evaluated, but they are easy and relatively inexpensive to implement, allowing them to reach a wide audience. Therefore, if we are able to develop these countermeasures that are shown to be effective, this could have wide reach. We talked about we need to enhance enforcement and change policy laws to make them stronger and more able to be enforced. We talked about the data limitations. There is a need to use objective measures of distracted driving behaviors, such as with naturalistic driving data. And finally, an increase in the collaboration and coordination across jurisdictions and across different groups would be helpful for improving the effectiveness of countermeasures. So in conclusion, we've talked about the challenges in distracted driving prevention, includes data limitations, legislative limitations, and resources, several different potential countermeasures, and how we can improve the effectiveness of these countermeasures. For more information on our research, please visit our website, and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much. And I think we will have time to give each of our panelists one discussion question. So Dr. Blenner, I'd like to start with you while we've just finished. So we know that there are a lot of really emotionally very resonant campaigns out there on the behavior and education side when it comes to distracted driving. These are, really moving testimonies from survivors or from people who've lost a loved one that the stories stick with people for a long time. Why is it, do you think, that there's difficulty kind of translating that awareness into lasting behavioral change?
Sorry about that. First, I'd like to say that it's difficult to know why these awareness and education campaigns may or may not be effective, in that the scientific literature on the effectiveness of these countermeasures has been largely inconclusive due to there not being enough evaluation activity. So this lack of rigorous evaluations on these kinds of programs and campaigns makes it difficult to know whether they are effective and what components might be effective and what might need to be focused on, which drivers it may be effective with. So this also ties back into the data limitations that I discussed, which basically indicates that without us knowing the actual numbers of distracted driving crashes, fatalities, all of those different outcomes, it makes it hard to know whether any of these campaigns are being effective. So I would say one of the things we need to do or focus on is including much more rigorous evaluations, such as process evaluations, outcome evaluations, and impact evaluations to really understand whether they're effective and when and how and with what communities.
Thank you. And you make a really good point about, we have to be able to accurately measure both the scale of the problem and the impact of any solution. I know that there's a lot of research institutions right here in the kind of mid-Atlantic area, Virginia Tech, Johns Hopkins, who are doing a lot of work on this, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they're doing next. And Dr. Hardy, you talked about the MUTCD and how it's now explicitly stated that the 85th percentile doesn't need to be this hard and fast rule. So that came out, I believe, in 2023. How have you seen it impact actual practice among your members?
It's starting to have an impact. One of the biggest, the issue arises from that sort of cultural standpoint. I look at it from a cultural and a legal standpoint. So the most recent edition of the MUTCD from a legal perspective gave engineers and planners and analysts permission to do it, to look at context and everything. Culturally, that's a bigger barrier. How do you change that? And if you go to many of the engineering programs, the civil engineering programs in the US, they still talk about speed limit setting, the 85th percentile. I teach at George Mason. When I talk to my transportation students, that's what they're still taught. Right? It's not the sort of finer aspects of look at context, look at land use. So you have this big ship, which is, moving at a certain speed, and you're trying to change it. Right? And sometimes it might, the joke that I use is that you might need some tugs to kind of come in and push it one way or maybe pull it one way or the other. But we need to get at the students, at the college, at the university level, and get this into the curriculum, that this is not the hard and fast rule, that there is flexibility, and flexibility is okay. You can use context, you can use your own decision-making intelligence to kind of set speed limits and that sort of thing. So that's one of the biggest things.
So you're not going to engineering jail.
I'm sorry?
They're not going to go to engineering jail.
Correct. Yes.
I guess on a similar note, what are the kind of challenges that you've seen in kind of the local implementation of a lot of these speed management plans that you also touched on? What is kind of challenging the people trying to get that done?
I think it's the permission to do it. There's a state, there's a federal state partnership or relationship, and then there's a state local, relationship. You have the MUTCD at the federal level. Many of the states will start adopting that as part of their state manual. So it's going to take some time for that to kind of filter down, and then for those local agencies to kind of partner and talk with their state DOTs about doing this. So coming up with those local speed management plans, each state operates a little bit differently. They partner, they work with their local agencies a little bit differently. You're just going to, it's first off, it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. So as the local agencies come up with these ideas, where I live in Falls Church, they had their 20 is plenty. It took time to convince VDOT that that's okay, that we're not going to run afoul of anything to do that. So part of it is education. Part of it is that culture change. And part of it is, like, I would say, the willingness of people to try something new, that it's going to be okay, that just because we did it this way for the past 40, 50 years doesn't mean we have to keep on doing it this way for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Thank you. And we appreciate everything ITE is doing on that topic. A question for Stephanie over the Zoom. So we have strong evidence now from Utah about the efficacy of 0.05 blood alcohol content laws, Utah being the only state that is below 0.08. There were many skeptics when the law was proposed who said that it wouldn't really have an impact on those most highly impaired drivers. It would just, put someone's mom in jail for having a glass of wine at dinner on vacation at the ski resort. And then kill tourism as a consequence. But instead, what we saw that was drunk driving was lowered across the board without damage to the hospitality sector, no mass criminalization. So what do you find right now are the obstacles to having more states want to get on board with 0.05?
It's a great question. So it really isn't the scientific piece, right? We know that lowering BAC limits results in reducing impaired driving, and we can see that in other countries. We see that in Europe. We saw that in Utah, as you mentioned. It's typically, the biggest obstacles to enacting 0.05 laws in states are typically political, and cultural. And I think part of the issue is there's still this cultural issue of not separating drinking alcohol from driving, right? There's a level of acceptance, and that applies to legislators too. If legislators themselves, and we see this in the headlines across the country, are engaging in this behavior, and some of them defend drunk drivers for a living, it's really hard to get past the goalpost on this issue. And we have victims and survivors working alongside the NTSB, the Safety Council, lots of organizations in, handfuls of states across the country, and they run into roadblocks all the time. I do think that the hospitality industry is a big issue. The fear is that their sales will be impacted. That was also an issue that came up during the 0.08 BAC fight at the national level and also at the state level. And that was never realized. There was never any, blowback in terms of the hospitality industry with reduced sales or fewer customers. It's really about making sure people plan ahead, right? And that people think, how am I going to get there? How am I going to get home? Having a designated driver. And the bottom line is when you reduce the BAC limits, it forces people to think through things in a way that they may not have previously. So, with 0.08, we reached a certain threshold of states before we went to the national standard. We're not anywhere near that with 0.05, but MAD and other groups are going to continue to push, and hopefully we'll make more gains in the future. These laws are not easy to get done. I also want to just add that equity concerns do come up, not just on this issue, but in a lot of spaces on traffic safety, giving permission to pull more people over. That is something that we hear a lot with respect to all offender ignition interlock laws, 0.05, anything that we're pushing at the state level. And that's something that we as a community need to address as well in a lot of states. But all of this work is challenging, and we just have to keep at it.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank all our panelists here for giving us quite a lot to think about in just conceptualizing the massiveness of the task ahead of us. But I think everyone here is committed to doing these difficult things. And the strength of having the Road to Zero network is that we've got so much knowledge and expertise to draw upon. So I want to thank everyone who has joined with Road to Zero for sharing what you know and for helping us to move bit by bit closer to the reality we want to see. Thank you. And now I'd like to share with you a reintroduction to an NSC project that you may have heard about before because it's actually just a little bit older than Road to Zero itself. And it's called My Car Does What, a website at mycardoeswhat.org that was created in partnership with the University of Iowa back in 2015. Because there was this realization that people were getting new cars with all these technologies in them, both related to safety and related to tests that make driving more convenient or easier. But it wasn't clear that people knew what these technologies actually did, or almost more importantly, what they don't do and what they couldn't do, because we know over-reliance on technology can be a danger itself. Well, as our speakers today have reminded us, 10 years, 11 years is eternity when it comes to vehicle technology. So much has changed. So many new technologies are now on the market and on vehicles now that we decided it was time for a bit of an update and a refresh. So My Car Does What now features these new advanced driving assistance systems and has explainers for exactly what they're doing on your car and how they can help you. The terms that we're using here come from a project called Clearing the Confusion, which was a partnership between National Safety Council and Road to Zero and experts like Consumer Reports and J.D. Power, Partners for Autonomous Vehicle Education, and I believe IIHS and AAA as well. We're trying to advance uniform sets of nomenclature for these new technologies, which often come with a lot of proprietary terms on them. For example, if you're wondering active driving assistance, this is something that you might have heard called Super Cruise, Blue Cruise, Pro Pilot Assist, Tesla's autopilots. These technologies, we're trying to find a way of standardizing the terms so that when people talk about it, we actually know that we're on the same page. So new feature pages have been added for everything that you see on here. And to give you a bit of an example of how we're doing this with these terms that might not have, a uniform terminology or a uniform icon standardized, we're trying to make it as intuitive as possible to give people the information they need. So for example, lane centering assistance. This very clearly, if you go to the website, will show you exactly what it does, what it doesn't do, so you don't over-rely on it. It gives questions and answers, such as, is this lane keeping assistance? I know what lane keeping assistance does, but is this the same? Answer is no, it's not. Where will this maybe not work? Where do I need to be prepared to not rely on it? We've renewed and kind of refreshed and cleaned up the page on My Car Does What that allows you to search by OEM. So you can find a really quick link to your car at the manufacturer's website. So you can get the owner's manual that tells you all the little tricky, precise details of how your systems work. Or if they have a dedicated page for safety features, it brings you right there. Because what we found when we were doing this update was that a lot of times there's no one standard way that everything works. If you want to activate your active parking assistance, does it allow you to take your hands off the wheel? Do you need to brake and accelerate? The answer is it depends. And we need people to be engaging with the materials that come straight from the automaker to really have the knowledge that they need to operate these safely every time. We also are updating our featured news and link pages so that they bring you the latest in what's going on in the world of vehicle technology. Where are we on self-driving cars? Where are we on moving along the road to autonomy and what's going on there? So we are going to be updating this in perpetuity and making sure that we can bring up-to-date, accurate information to our readers. We're also exploring the opportunities for training in the future. So I encourage everyone to visit mycardoswhat.org. Even if you think you know your vehicle inside out, there might be something new that you learn about, a technology that you haven't been taking advantage of that you could find really helps you. If you have a younger, newer driver in your family, it's a good introduction to what they might not be receiving in, say, a driver's ed program, and a reminder to always familiarize yourself with exactly what your car does so that you're no longer asking, my car does what? You can tell people, this is what my car does, and this is how it's helping keep me safe. So,
Julia, what happened to Rick and Scout?
Rick and Scout? Oh, I'm glad you remember them. Rick and Scout were part of our My Car Does What 1.0, a man and his dog, detailing how all these technologies work. Just knowing what I do about dogs, I doubt Scout is still with us, but you can still find some of his videos on our website. Scout lives on through our safety education. Thank you. And now I'd like to move on to the final two videos from our current group of grantees. We've been in Washington, D.C. today, but these two are going to take you to Michigan. The first up at the University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute under Dr. Jingwen Hu will be talking about technologies on vehicles to address pedestrian injuries. We know that oftentimes certain features of larger vehicles, of light trucks, can have worse consequences for pedestrians. And he's looking into what do we know about this and what kind of technologies might improve this. And then from Wayne State University under Dr. Stephen Lavrenz, we're looking at how we can improve pedestrian safety on what you might typically know as a STROAD, these wide suburban type arterials that actually do still, they don't always stay in the suburbs. And in Detroit, Dr. Lavrenz has found several of these roads, and they're looking at what kind of approaches they can take to create safer roads for pedestrians there. So I'll go ahead with our pedestrian focused presentations. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jingwen Hu. I'm a professor at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Just a little bit background of this study. Pedestrian injury is an increasing public health problem worldwide. Every year, over 1.2 million people died in motor vehicle crashes, and pedestrians account for more than a third of them. In the United States, though, the percentage is a little bit lower, 17% in 2020. But that number has been on the rise steadily in the past decade. In spite of the global recognized safety concerns regarding pedestrian injuries, safety standards for pedestrian protection have limitations. If you look at the recent US data, you will see that pedestrian injuries, especially serious injuries, the chest and abdomen, if you combine them together, the number is definitely higher than the lower extremity injuries, and is approaching the head injuries. The reason behind it is that in the United States, we have more and more SUVs and pickup trucks. That is driving the chest injury risk much higher, and that's certainly a concern. We have new tools available and new pedestrian safety technologies to be helpful. The objective of the study is to use parametric finite element pedestrian and vehicle models to assess the effectiveness of safety technologies on pedestrian injuries, specifically for SUVs and pickup trucks. Here is an overall summary of what we have done so far. We actually collect the vehicle scans for 74 vehicle front end geometry. We did statistical analysis to look at the variation of those vehicle front end geometry, and then we morph vehicle front end model to actually prepare for the simulations. We select a bunch of vehicle front end geometry and pedestrians, and we run over 350 simulations, and then we analyze the result. I would like to thank Road to Zero, National Safety Council, NHTSA, and IHS to support this study.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Stephen Lavrenz. I'm an associate professor of civil and environmental engineering here at Wayne State University and the head of our transportation research group. So when people think about pedestrian safety problems, oftentimes you'll think first about the downtown or like the neighborhood main streets. But some of the most difficult walking environments are actually these wide, fast, access-heavy arterial roads. Some people will refer to these as STROADs. What we like to do is we refer to them as suburban type arterials. And that emphasizes that while they promote a car-centric mentality, many of these streets can be found in even our densest and largest urban centers. So the main risk factors are going to be long crossings, limited refuge, vehicle speeds that tend to make severe injury more likely, few protected crossing opportunities, and a lot of bus stop and driveway activity that creates crossing demand. So with that in mind, this project has three main goals. So first of all, to identify high-risk suburban type arterials without having to wait for that long record of fatal and serious injury crashes. Second is to observe pedestrian and vehicle conflicts directly using video and safety surrogates and other near-miss types of safety measures. Finally, and third most, based on those findings, translate those patterns into practical countermeasures and policy guidance. And so our work plan has three parts. And the end product here, it's meant to be a usable guide or a playbook, if you will, by public agencies who are dealing with similar types of corridors. And what we're finding is that, the crash maps are still useful, but as you may imagine, they're mostly going to just tell us where the severe harm has already happened. So once we identified those candidate risk or screening factors, that led to a weighted corridor risk score. And so ultimately what this screening is going to help us do is it's going to help us to identify some of these comparison cases. And that distinction is important because we want to separate some of the untreated systemic risk from corridors that already have some of that mitigation in place. The third finding so far, based on our data collection, is that our camera strategy needs to be hybrid. And this is an important lesson learned for any agency wishing to replicate this kind of work. So because of that, our field plan is combining fixed cameras with portable or mobile video at some representative sites. What we're starting to see is that the likely countermeasure space is already fleshing out. The broader significance of this project is that this work is going to help us move pedestrian safety on these corridors from a reactive approach towards a more proactive one. Thank you again.
Well, I get the pleasure of closing us out today. Thank you all for staying with us here in the DC room. We are at the National League of Cities, and I just want to do a shout out to Brittany Kohler, Morgan Birch, and Anthony Scriggs for hosting us here. We are here each year. I don't know if they'll invite us back, but hopefully we will. So please thank the hosts of our event. Thank you to our presenters, 2 great panels, and to our grantees who shared their work for this past season. And thank you all for the life-saving work that you do. The past 10 years have been filled with both setbacks for some of us and then getting back up and running fast, and then big successes and small successes across the board. These things are life-saving advancements, and we got to hear about some of them here today. There's dozens and dozens of others that are being done by coalition partners and in the collaboration between partners, which is so great to see. You've all shown what's possible, that our streets are not immutable. Yes, they're in concrete, but they can be changed and moved and painted. Our policies can evolve and do, and that people can change. And we've heard a lot about that behavior change that's still needed in front of us. I look forward to seeing everything that all of you will do and accomplish together over the next 10 years so that no one loses their life on our roads. I want to give a final shout out to Julia back here, our moderator and our leader for Road to Not be in better hands. And Julia, thank you for a great event here today and ending on time if I do my job here. So thank you so much. There are some few treats out in the lobby if you want to take one home for your lunch. Thank you for joining us. But more importantly, thank you for all the work that you do to save lives on our roads. Until next time.